And good evening, everyone. Welcome back to WOR World Online Racing League Tier 1. Once again, it's round 2 of the Season 21 Championship, where we head off to Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. And there's an unfamiliar face on your screens today, as Dan Field is off to Montenegro on holiday. A weird holiday destination, if you ask me. We've got Tom Knight, TK, the man behind the production, here as backup. So, Tom, TK, welcoming. Great to have you here, of course. You know, you're over on the rival league, PSGL, as a Tier 1 commentator, so I'm sure that you recognise many of these drivers on our screens.
I certainly do, and obviously in and amongst the tiers we've got quite a few reservists in this afternoon, so quite a few of the Tier 2 drivers that I do recognise as well. But regardless, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic race here this evening. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia awaits.
Yes, it certainly does. And we'll have a look at the standings from last time out. Of course, we only had one round before this one, and we can see that Nicholas Longe is the driver that leads the standings after a brilliant win around the Red Bull Ring. And Julian Klaffenbach came home in second place, and Istvan Pukki finished in third on 15 points. And then we have Joris Krozen in fourth for Haas on 12. And then we have many reserves lurking below, that being Leo Lund, Cameron Dowds, Jack West, Daniele Parodi, and Will Lewis. Of course, Jarno Otmeier did jump up into that top 10, but because of a penalty removal for Will Lewis, that dropped the Flying Dutchman down to P11 in the race results last time out. So very interesting results there. Many of our Tier 2 level drivers and a couple of our Tier 1 reserves are doing a very good job at the start of this campaign, and a few of them are back again tonight, but also a couple of new faces here in Tier 1. But of course, TK, we've got, I think, a 12-race calendar here this season, and of course we've had Austria, Saudi Arabia, many more interesting tracks that I've got to say.
Absolutely. We head to Australia next time out, a beautiful circuit down under, one that is encouraging fantastic racing. We then head to Suzuka on August 24th for round 4, and then Sao Paulo at the start of the September races. Mexico City, just a short trip down the coastline to find themselves at the highest altitude that they'll have over the course of this 14-race calendar. We've got Great Britain up next on September 21st, just 2 days before I turn 26, and then Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, China, the United States for round 11, with the Netherlands, Qatar and Belgium rounding out that 14 calendar season. A lot of tracks on there which of course encourage great racing. I'm really looking forward to seeing how our drivers handle each and every one of those circuits.
Indeed. And before we get our way into the session, we'll have a little talk about the grid that we've got tonight. We haven't got a graphic for the grid, unfortunately, but we do have many of our reserve drivers in. So let's run through who we have here this evening. So McLaren, we have Philip Preschneider and Leo Lund, of course, both parts of the McLaren Shadow team as a development driver. And then we have probably the most competitive team here tonight, Ferrari. They've gone full force with Barry Burmand and Ismail Fassi. And then Red Bull, yet again, two more reserves. They've got Aston Martin development driver Liam Stevens alongside Gamble Chontos And then we have Mercedes with Esteban Pukki, who just unfortunately left Mercedes. And Veloce, he's alongside R8G contracted driver Shanika Clay. Then we have Aston Martin with Nicholas Longuet and Duncan Hoffland. Alpine, Luca Rapasa, and then Bant Shabakonyi. Haas is Joris Krozen and Andre Molnar. Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, V-Carb. We've got Wojtek Steg and Jan Halliday, an all-Czech lineup. And then finally, we have Williams with Ika Baena and Tamas Gal. And then Kick Sauber with Cameron Dowds and Tycho Hardy. So a couple of familiar faces from last week in terms of full-time. Same for reserves. But then we've got the likes of Wojtek Steg, Jan Halliday, Andre Molnar, who we haven't seen yet this season. So very interested to see what they can kind of offer in this non-conventional full qualifying and 50% format, because these guys are normally used just to a short qualifying and straight into the race.
Absolutely, and it turns what they typically know and what they typically understand pretty much on its head. You no longer have that initial pressure in that 18-minute qualifying session to get the fastest time. It's all about survival in Q1 and Q2, and then just to make your way through to that final top 10 shootout to try and get pole position. But I think what we'll find with so many reserves on the grid, I believe there's 14 reserves stepping in for this evening's endeavours, that we are going to see a mixed grid. We're going to see some drivers maybe out of position compared to where they are used to be or where they're expecting to be, but also a lot of pressure on the Tier 1 guys to perform their best, because there's going to be a lot of eager Tier 2 drivers wanting to try and prove their worth.
There certainly will be. Before we head in, we'll have a little look at the track, because Jeddah it's an interesting one. It's going to be quite difficult, I think, on this game because of course, the engine temperatures. And here you are following cars consistently. So I think, TK, will probably see a few gaps start to increase after probably the first 2 or 3 laps. But then, of course, it's all down to strategy after that onwards.
Absolutely right. It's going to be a circuit that is incredibly technical. Drivers have to pick their braking points almost precisely lap after lap after lap, especially in qualifying as well, when you are trying to get those tenths, those thousandths, those hundredths as well to really nail down the lap times. I think the main overtaking points we'll see are into the final corner turn, I believe 21, 22, and then all the way down into turn 1 as well. It's that long straight that really promotes some fantastic racing here.
Indeed, and we have got word on 2 of our drivers who aren't taking part in qualifying. One of them being Leo Lund for his interesting takes on racing last time out in Tier 2. He's moved to Tier 1, so he's going to serve the qualifying ban here. And then Ishmael Fassi has decided he wants to start at the back anyway. I don't know why I'd want to do that on this game. On 24, fair enough, you can work your way forward. But on this game, it's going to be very difficult from 20th place. So we wish the best to Isma on that one. But we have got a couple of drivers out on track, of course, all on the intermediate tyres here, as we do start to look trackside at Jeddah. And any drivers here, TK, that you're looking at and you're kind of interested in what they can do? I
think there's a few drivers in the mix here that you've really got to try and consider, or at least keep an eye on how they work their way through. Liam Stevens, obviously a fantastic prospect and has been in the lower divisions, hopefully trying to make a name for himself in the top tier as he makes his way through. Shanika Clay, of course, another driver that is absolutely superb on his day, and we'll be hoping that he can find some victory and some good results at Jeddah. Duncan Hoffland, it wouldn't be a Tier 1 lobby without mentioning his name, stepping into that Aston Martin seat full time at the start of last year's F1 Sim Racing World Championships. He's looking for some good results. Hasn't necessarily had the best of starts to a full-time career, though.
No, and I think it's going to be interesting how the podium looks tonight, because we've had 5 different races in the past here at Jeddah, that being season 18, I think it was then 16, 14, 13, 12, if I get it correctly. If not, I'm sorry, but there's only 2 drivers that have taken a podium in the past here that are on the grid tonight, and that being Nicholas Longuet, who took P2 back in season 14, and then I think it was Esteban Pukki who took a win just 2 seasons ago here around Jeddah. Nobody else on this grid has taken a podium around this circuit at all, so we're going to see probably a couple of new faces on the podium. But of course, it looks good for Nico and Istvan, as they've both had some royalty around this circuit. But we have got a couple of cars now just starting some of their laps on the intermediate tyre. We have Luca Rapasa and Jan Hade. Of course, Jan has been here for a very long time, has featured many times in Tier 1, of course, part of the Aston Martin development team. And then Luca Rapasa as well, a driver that has only recently been at the top, of course, had a very good F124 campaign, has now been given the chance to drove a couple of times here in WOR PC Tier 1, was also a championship contender over in the Ironman League. So I think even though he's normally in Tier 2 and we don't often see him even as a reserve here in Tier 1, I think he's definitely a driver that we can't count out when it comes to possibly some decent points.
Absolutely, and we're seeing lots of drivers just going on their installation laps on those intermediates, just making sure they're aware of how the track conditions are. It's a mid-range in terms of air and track temperature at the moment, 24 degrees in the air, 30 degrees down on track at the moment, and we are seeing it's Luca Rapassa on those intermediates going the fastest out of the three running at the moment into the 33s for the first sector, the only driver to be able to do that at the moment. But of course we are expecting more drivers to come and set their opening laps, and of course we won't be long until we do see them go out for the first set of soft running as well. Of course they don't want to get caught out potentially by a few mistakes, a few incidents.
No, certainly not. And yeah, I reckon we'll see them go out between 12 and 10 minutes. When we've got a full Tier 1 grid, they normally go out at the same time. But I've noticed when we have some of our Tier 2 drivers feature, they tend to go out at around that 12 to 11 minute mark, a little bit earlier, give themselves a little bit more preparation. And sometimes they might even fuel up more just in case they want to go for a couple of laps, in case they're making a mistake on their initial lap. As we do see the first official lap time on the board, but it is on a set of the intermediates, and it will be from Joris Krozen, a 131.4. Of course, that, well, if people are trying to achieve that lap on the soft tyres, I'd be very, very confused. So, no, Joris will head back into the pits and, of course, strap on a set of softs and go again in a couple of minutes' time. But, of course, there's a lot of chances here for drivers who normally aren't in the top to get out of Q1 and possibly pose a challenge on going through to Q2 or even Q3. Of course, the likes of Leo Lund and Luca Rapassa, as I've mentioned, are drivers that we should straight away be seeing challenging for Q2 and 3. But then we've got the likes of Gabor Chontos, Cameron Dowd, who are quite new to this Tier 1 grid. And, of course, they have more than enough opportunities to try and jump up into Q3 and Q2 themselves. So it could be a very interesting one here tonight in qualifying. But, of course, still questions to me why Ismail Fassi wants to start at the back, because I just can't see him getting that forward. I mean, we've seen a few races in the Ironman League and over in PSGL, and it's just so difficult to make moves on this game because the dirty air is just, I think, a little bit too extreme, isn't it, at this point?
It really is, and it's something that our drivers are having to adapt to as they make their way through. It's been a definite learning curve for a considerable number of them as they've made their way up through the tiers and also through the races. Of course, this is only round 2 of PC Tier 1s. There is still a lot of rounds still to go. They won't necessarily have had that high level experience on F1 25 yet. Not everyone is fully accustomed to how the car handles, how the game handles, or how to make the most of essentially the deficit in which they find themselves. And it's interesting to note that pretty much everybody still sat in the pits, but I think Fassi's either got a master plan here, something that he's prepared for long in advance, or he's maybe just trying to plan something for later in the week or maybe a future event, just seeing how it goes, especially at a track like Jeddah.
I mean, I suppose, if I remember correctly, Jeddah's used quite a lot even in the F1 sim racing championship. So I suppose he could be trying a different strategy, you know, trying something different, seeing if that could work for future reference, as we do see Joris Krozen's car just get entered back into the pits, and then hopefully we'll start to see a couple of cars make a move and look to start their first laps on a set of the soft tyres. But of course, along with Ismail Fassi, it's going to be a difficult difficult race for Leo Lund, who will also be starting right at the bottom. Of course, with the qualifying ban from Tier 2, that got moved to Tier 1, because I think he's left Tier 2 and has now joined Tier 1 as a full-time reserve. So he's also going to have a struggle starting at the back here and working his way through drivers of his level, but then drivers who are probably, no offence to Leo, a lot better than him as well.
I think a lot of it is all about that learning curve. You can't just jump into the top tier of WOR. You have to take that step up to go through the reservist stage to get accustomed to the level of racing, the skill gap that you sometimes have to find. And I think that's where Leo stands at the moment. He's got to get that racing experience in. He's got to have the laps, the racing, the etiquette as he finds himself getting ready and taking that next step to coming up through the ranks. And it's important to see how it all goes as well. And let us know in the live chat who you may be rooting for. I've seen a few people in there already asking where Yano is. I believe he's out karting this afternoon or taking part in some kart race, so doesn't join us on the grid for Saudi Arabia.
No, and it's a big shame. Jarno's normally a driver that everybody in the chat loves to see. So do we all. Great member of the community, but of course he's off doing some karting. I think he's been doing it all weekend. I saw a comment in one of the general chats earlier on saying that they were speaking to him about a penalty he got in a rival league, and yes, he said he wasn't happy about it. But he said that to someone in real life, so that shows Jarno's distaste of that one. But of course, here in WOR, the drivers have it in the rulebook that they can't pit on the last lap to take a win. So that means we haven't got to worry about that tonight. But either way, I don't think around this track you'd find it to be an advantage. And if they someone made it happen, fair play. But I just don't think it's even mathematically possible. But there we go. We have drivers now out on track, finally looking to set some lap times and kind of seeing what we'll be looking at this evening in terms of competitive times. And let's see who's first out on track. I believe it's one of the Williams cars. It will be Tamas Gal, who's a driver we know very well. Of course, part of the R8G team, is one of those that is so quick in qualifying. You can always bet a bit of money on him to go into pole position. But in the race, he just, I don't know if it's confidence or just pace, maybe setup, but he just seems to fall back so quickly. And hopefully tonight is his night to try and score some decent points.
I think that's what we'll be hoping for as well, to try and, you know, take advantage, so to speak, of the grid being, I don't want to say limited in numbers because we've got the full 20 grid out, but having that bit of mix-up, having the reservists and the Tier 2 drivers come in and shaking the grid up, he's got an opportunity to try and really make waves this afternoon. Obviously, we're only one round into the season. We alluded to it earlier, how the championship stands after the last race results, and we'll have another look of that between qualifying and the race. But as it stands, there's a great opportunity to score some points here tonight.
There certainly is, but let's have a ride on with Tamas Gal heading down to turn number 1. Of course, want to throw the car in, get back on the power immediately, goes so close to the wall as possible, and then in towards turn 4, down to 5th gear, get back on the power straight away, use the curb on the right-hand side to pull the car round as you head through this snaky, horrible Mickey Mouse sort of sector. As you head through in towards turn 10, of course, the car can slide away, but you've got to keep it hooked up. At the end of sector 1, what will it be here for Tamas Gal? It's a 31.674. Not a bad start here for Tamas on this lap through the bank. Turn 13, back on the power once again. Next, you have this horrible mid-speed chicane. You want to pull as close to the left as you can. Get the car turned in nicely. Hop the curb on the left. Try not to displace the car, because if you do so, you will enter that wall on the exit. And then, of course, it's a long run up towards the next chicane down at turn 22, where you just kind of got to throw the car in and hope.
Certainly do. You've got to make sure that car sticks. It's sometimes, as you alluded to, a little bit of a hope and a prayer, but when you can open up the third sector as much as you possibly can, you've got one corner that all eyes will be on. It's this final corner is a descending left-hander. It can be rather tricky if you're trying to go at full speed, especially if you try and take it too wide in a race situation. But for Tamas Gal, it's a 27.7 in the middle sector. He'll run up towards the line. Keep an eye on it. It's Van Pookie, who's gone purple in the first 2 sectors. He makes his way around that final corner at the moment. We have got Bents now taking away that purple middle sector, so times are starting to fly in rapidly. Nico goes fastest for the time being. Can it's Van Pookie take it away? He can. It's a 25.887 for the Mercedes team.
A great lap there by Ist Van Pookie ahead of Nicholas Longate. And there's still a couple of more cars to set a lap. Cameron Dowds up into P6 for the Kick Sabre team. Next we have one of the Alpines. That'll be Ben Shamakonyi. Goes up into P4, 4 thousandths behind Barry Berman. Next, I think it was Andre Molnar. Only P10 for him with a 26.316. Then we have Ikebana, but unfortunately he has an invalidated lap. Next, we'll see one of the Haas cars. I think that's Joris Krozen at 26.188. Janica Clay makes it a Mercedes 1-2 with a 25.978. And then next across the line would have been, I think, one of the... Yes, I think it was Wojtek Stek, but unfortunately only 26.7 for him. Luca Rapasa jumps up into P3, the third driver to go up into the 25s. And then, unfortunately, mistakes being made for both Jan Halliday and Gabor Chontos.
Philippe Prejnada, though, sets the fastest third sector out of all of our drivers at the moment. Hasn't had the best first and second, but that could show that he has an incredible straight line speed bolted onto the McLaren at the moment. Obviously, that third sector is pretty much 2 long straights, separated by just the one corner, essentially. We'll count out that middle couple of corners. But obviously, it's really showing how that car's set up. We're seeing drivers that are quick in the first and the second, how much downforce they can have on the car, and that allows them to throw the car in with confidence. But that third sector is all about straight line speed.
It certainly is, and looking at lap times there on the board, it's around 3/10 separating the top 12 and then a couple of cars a little bit further back. But I've got to say, a lot of pressure lies, I think, on those Tamas Gal down, already 2/10 away, and Philippe Prejnade up in 13th is also only a 10th off Tamas Gal, so I think 7th down are probably a little bit of discomfort, but great start to the session for the two Mercedes cars of Istvan Pukki and Janneke Clay. Of course, Istvan has won around this circuit once before. Janneke Clay never been on the podium at this circuit, and then of course Luca Rapassa with a brilliant, it was a 25.999 onto the board ahead of Nicholas Longuet and Barry Burman, two former teammates over at the Ferrari camp, and then of course Ismail Fassi in the other Ferrari. He's going to be starting from the back in the race, but of course our bottom five is Leo Lunda and Ismail Fassi already gone, and then we have Ika Bainer, Jan Halliday and Gabor Chontos, but realistically Ika, Jan and Gabor are the only ones to try and fight for a top 15 place anyway.
Absolutely, there's only 3 positions in that drop zone. Obviously, after Leo Lund and Ismail Fassi decided for varying reasons that they will be starting at the back for this Grand Prix. We have got Q2 and Q3 to come. Let us know any early predictions of who you think might be going for an early shower in this Q1 session. Barry Burman decides to call it a day early, as does Istvan Pukki. And it's an incredible, bold choice from both of them. Janneke Clay can probably rest easy, as we've got Lucas Rapassa and Nicolas Longuet as well. All of them retiring in that top 5. Janneke stands as a bit of a lone wolf as it stands, not retiring early, making sure that he's just prepped and ready. Tamas Gal down in 7th, also hitting the showers early. But any early predictions of who you might think is taking an early shower from this qualifying session here, Nathan?
Indeed, I mean, it's going to be a difficult one. Wojtek Steg hasn't had the best start here. Unfortunately, a 26.7, of course, that's not representative of his pace. He's not 9/10 off of Istvan Pukki. I think it's more the fact of just not getting the lap underway properly, maybe a lack of, preparation on that out lap, or just possibly mistaking one of the corners and, losing a 10th here, losing a 10th there, and unfortunately that puts him into a very, very difficult position. Of course, the same goes for Ika, Jan and Gabor, who I think 2 of them, I think it was Ika and Gabor, both had an invalidation, but Jan Halliday just slowed down on his lap, so he must have made a mistake somewhere. So pressure also lies on those 3, as Duncan Hoffland in P8, he decides he's also done in this session. So 9th down, go out onto circuit, and 8th up decide that they don't need to go once again here in this qualifying session. But I think, the likes of Cameron and Liam are certainly under a lot of pressure, because they're only 30 thousandths ahead of Joris Krozen, who's also in a bit of trouble in P12.
It's an interesting and very bold call. I think what they haven't remembered here is that 3 drivers haven't set a lap time yet, so drivers are still under pressure. There's still time to be found. The track temperature has fallen by, the air temperature's fallen by just 1 degree down to 23. Track remains unchanged, but especially in Jeddah, where you can pick up times by the barest of margins, just riding the curbs, just that little bit extra. Sometimes in some of those lap times, I maybe wondering if they're retiring just a little bit too early. Maybe they're not necessarily too concerned about it with the amount of Tier 2 drivers and reservists that we have in for this evening's racing. But, I've been proved wrong before, and I'm happy to be proved wrong again, especially when it comes to retiring with a couple of minutes left on the clock. We will continue through. I think Nathan might be having a couple of technical issues, but we will continue through. It's going to be Cameron Dowd that is the first driver to start their second run here this afternoon, closely followed by Andre, who's down in 14th, and everybody else starting to make their way through. Gabor comes across the line to start off their final run of the session, as does Tycho Hardy in P11 at the moment. All of them not looking for pole position. Of course, this is a full qualifying session. They are looking for safety to get through to the following qualifying sessions, Q2 and Q3 to come in the next few moments. And of course, it will be everyone below that 15th place that will be taking an early shower and having to watch the rest of the grid go through for that final few battle places. Leo Lund serving that qualifying ban if you are just joining us, and Ismail Fassi opting to start from the back of the grid for this qualifying session and for the race later on as Andre retires. That might have been a crash out on circuit. You can see on the track map at the bottom right hand side of your screens that Haskar, as they came through this section of corners, stranded in the middle of the circuit. Thankfully, ghosting's turned on as Tycho Hardy goes flying through the middle of that stranded Haskar, but Andre will be kicking himself because that almost certainly means he's going home in Q1.
It certainly does, unless Ika, Jan and Gabor somehow will make mistakes once again. But the first car to cross the line will be Cameron Dowd. Currently quite safe in P9. He crosses the line. Where can he go? Stays P9. Does improve, but not enough for position. Next we have the other kick saber. This is Tycho Hardy. P11 currently should be making his way up into that top 10 quite comfortably. Let's see what he can do. So he goes into the pits. He knows he doesn't need to find another improvement. Next is Gabor Chontos. He's invalidated, so he's out here in this session. Same for Ika Boehner. What about Jan Halliday? He has the chance to try and make his way through into Q2. No chance for Gabor, no chance for Ika. Leo and Ishmael are already out. Can Jan Halliday make his way into Q2? Yes, he can. Goes second fastest with a 125.935. Liam Stevens jumps up into P6. Wojtek Steg can't make his way through, and somehow Andre Molnar survives. But I'm sure because he's crashed out in Q1, he won't be going through to Q2 anyway.
I believe you're absolutely correct. Had that crash out earlier, so I believe only 14 drivers will be making their way through to the second qualifying session. Wojtek had an opportunity to secure safety. It was pretty much confirmed, and then he couldn't go quicker at the final time of asking, and that's just could have been a breath of fresh air for Andre there, knowing that he didn't get through on pure pace alone, or he didn't get knocked out on pure pace alone. But of course, he's been handed that safety. He knew he would have got through, and maybe we'll be feeling a little bit under the weather after that crash out in the second sector. We'll run through your complete order in the next few minutes, and we'll see who got knocked out and who's through to Q2 here, Nathan.
Indeed, and it was Pookie who went quickest with a 25.887 ahead of Jan Halliday and Shanika Clay. In third, and we have Luca Rapassa, Nicholas Longate, Philip Presneder, Liam Stevens, Barry Burmand, Ben Shabakonyi, and Tamas Gal, the top 10. Then we have Duncan Hoffland, Cameron Dave, Tycho Harder, Joris Krozen through into Q2. Then a crash for Andre Molnar means his qualifying ends early. Then we have Wojtek Steg, Ika Boehner, Leo Lund, Ishmael Fassi, and Gabor Chontos. Two drivers there who could have set a lap in qualifying. Unfortunately, couldn't get one on the board, and that just proves how difficult that this Jeddah Corniche circuit is. It's not a nice track when it comes to qualifying. It's very easy to make those little mistakes. It's either an invalidation or straight into a barrier. And of course, Andre Molnar met that barrier at the end of Sector 1 heading into Sector 2. But here we are, the top 15 all made their way through. It was only a couple of tenths, TK, separating first to 15th. So I think there's definitely more than opportunity for a couple of upsets here heading into Q3.
Yeah, very close margins, as to be expected in amongst this grid at the moment. It's a very tight and technical circuit, but also probably one of the fastest flowing on the calendar if you really want to put those two together. It's a hard one to try and quantify if you want to think about it. It's technical, but it's also fast. It's probably the worst combination for some drivers. They really have to focus lap after lap. You don't get that typical relief of a long straight that you do on many circuits. I mean, you get the run up towards the final corner and down towards turn 1. But most of the time, especially in a race situation, that's when most of the battles are going to be happening. So you've got to have almost 100% focus throughout the course of a race, because it's absolutely incredible.
It certainly is, and we do have a few cars going out nice and early. The first one out on track will be the Aston Martin of, not Nicholas Longate, it will be Duncan Hoffland. Of course, he's been here for many seasons now in the top flights WOR PC Tier 1. And of course, should be a driver that we should be considering for a top 3, top 5 at least. He's definitely one of the quickest drivers we've got here this evening. But of course, needs to make it through Q2 and potentially get a lap on the board in Q3 if he gets that far first. But of course, it is a difficult track, and when we get dirty air in the race, that's going to make it difficult for drivers to follow through corners. And then, of course, engine overheating as well. That's quite a common thing in this game, a lot higher than it has been in previous games. So I think gaps will definitely start to increase once we get into the race, which kind of shows how much qualifying matters here. So I think especially when we get our way to Q3, those drivers will be probably trying for pole a lot more normally than they would.
Absolutely. It's going to be all-out battles when we head into that third and final qualifying session. It's going to be who is the fastest of all of them. They don't call it a top 10 shootout for nothing, because it's going to be everything on the line. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a couple of drivers maybe hitting the wall, similar to what we saw with Andre slightly earlier on. And obviously we were correct in our predictions. Only 14 drivers here for Q2. So it will be 14 drivers narrowed down to 10 as we head into the third qualifying session. But Duncan Hoffland will be the first to take the timing beam and kick off this second qualifying.
Right, let's see what Duncan can do as he heads his way through Sector 1 nicely so far as he makes his way through the S's section, of course, as close to the walls as humanly possible. And then, of course, a flick to the left, try and hop the curb without running a little bit too wide. And then sector 1 concludes a 31.955. I think that tells me this is a used tyre set here for Duncan Hoffland in Q2. Cameron Downs has crashed. Then, I believe, turn 4. And that means his qualifying session is over before it really started. So he's out in Q2. Will probably be starting from 14th place. What a shame there for Cameron Downs, a driver that we saw heading into Q3 when he took part of for Ferrari last time out in Austria. And now has no chance at all of making his way through because of a crash at turn 4. But we'll know, TK, that turn 4 around this circuit is difficult and it's lethal. One small mistake and you've got a very, very high chance of, unfortunately, losing that left front tyre.
Yeah, we rode on board with Luca Rapassa there just briefly. You could see the tyre marks, the skid marks that he left on the exit of the 4th corner. It was clear that he just clipped the inside barrier. Car went sliding across into the runoff zone, and rather unfortunate way to exit out of Q2. Istvan Pukki goes fastest and then immediately replaced by Nicolas Longuet, so times are coming thick and fast. It's the purple, all 3 sectors for the Aston Martin that stands at the top at the moment. Benson, Liam Stevens slot in 3rd and 4th respectively, as a lot of other times are starting to come across our timing board.
Indeed they are. Next we have Philippe Preschnade up. Where can he go? Goes P4 for the McLaren team. Next will be, I believe, Jan Halliday or Luca Rapassa. No, but it will be Luca in the in the Alpine for this evening. Let's see what he can do now as he heads his way up to the line. Of course, was one of the only drivers into the 25s at the end of Q1, but it will be a 26.9, of course, on a set of the used tyres. And we have Shanika Clay, who's took a very odd line at the end of sector 1 and decided to completely cut the track. He must have just made a bit of a mistake and lost the rear. Of course, that will mean no lap time set for him. Jan Halliday is just heading his way down towards the end of sector 2, but also no lap time set for him. And then Barry Burmand following suit as well. And of course, because of the crash for Cameron and the crash for Andre, only 3 drivers technically are going out of this one, and at the moment it sits Jan, Tamas and Barry, who I'm confident to say, TK, will probably not end this session 11th, 12th and 14th.
Well, we can make all the predictions in the world that we like, and often we are proved wrong. It's an unpredictable game as F1 sim racing in its element, because so much can change in the blink of an eye. We saw Jeddah when it headed for the official F1 Sim Racing World Championship, just the carnage, the chaos that it really pulled together. We saw that massive accident as they headed through the 2nd sector into the 3rd, and it was just probably one of the biggest that we've ever seen in the F1 Sim Racing World Championship. It can throw those curveballs, and I have a feeling we might see some of those curveballs tonight.
I'm sure we will, whether that's in the next couple of sessions or whether it's in the race. Something's going to throw a bit of a curveball into this one for sure, as we do just see now a couple of our drivers just heading back into the pits, and that's their laps done and dusted here for the first part of Q2. Of course, they'll probably go again on a new set of tyres, and then of course hopefully set a lap time which is good enough to retire on, and then go into Q3. Of course, some of them will have to go for a lap now and then another lap at the end of the session. And going out nice and quickly is Tamas Gal in the Williams car. Wanted to be out nice and early. He's done that a couple of times so far in these past couple of qualifying sessions. Gets out first and just has a little bit of free air. And then of course Joris Crozen and Tycho Hardy, both parts of the R8G team as well, also heading out onto track here with 8.5 minutes to go in this Q2 session. And of course Tamas Gal and Jan Halliday as well in 11th. All have got lots of pressure on them here to get a lap time on the board, and hopefully a comfortable one as well. I don't really want to be mixing in with those guys who have set a lap time on the used tyre.
Absolutely. It's one that you've really got to balance not only your expectations but also your tyre wear. If you haven't been able to set that first lap, you've got to, you know, talk to yourself. How confident are you that you're going to be able to set a lap time come that final run? Do you want to go out for a second run for safety, potentially burn up a set of tyres that you could use to go for pole position come Q3? Or are you more looking for that safety just to get into Q3, get the mid-pack in that top 10, you know, talking 4th, 5th, 6th, and then kind of start from there and work your way forward? It depends where you're looking in the mind frame. How confident are you in your own qualifying ability?
Yep, it's all down to confidence around this circuit, because they've all got the skill to go fast here, but you see, you know, the one or two drivers that edge that a little bit more in qualifying and sometimes in the race That's just due to their confidence and the levels that they believe in themselves, that they can strive that little bit more, take those extra couple of kilometres an hour into a corner or go an extra inch or two closer to the wall. Around a track like this, that is, those are the margins that really matter. As we do see Tamas Gale now heading his way down to turn 1 on his first lap of the Q2 session. Of course, didn't opt to go out at the start of the session. I presume will now be on a set of the new soft tyres as he makes his way through turn 4, of course, where the corpse of Cameron Dowds did lay a few minutes ago as he makes his way through the S's section. Of course, that curb there, which you just hopped over, is lethal. You get on that curb at the wrong angle and it just pulls the car forwards for the whole curb. So you've just got to hope that you don't end up hooking that curb on the little bit of a, I suppose, a little bit of a straight heading into the right-hander. And it was a decent sector 1 here for Tamas Gale as he makes his way through into turns 14 and 15. Of course, yet again, later the brakes, get the car hot through and use the curbs to rotate the car. That's a key thing about this circuit. If there's a curb, try and use it to the best of your ability. And then, of course, a short-ish DRS straight in towards turn 22. Yet again, a dabble on the brakes, back on the pedal instantly. Use the throttle as well to turn your car through that corner. And then, of course, sector 2 is departed. And now, one little straight into turn 27. And then, of course, a dash to the line to set your qualifying lap.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on the times as they come in. Apologies, folks at home. I forgot to re-enable the sector times or the lap times up in the top right-hand side of your screens, but it has been turned on now as Tamas Gale comes across the line, set the fastest lap of the session so far. A 1:25.791, 1,000th of a second quicker than Joris Krozen could go on his second attempt there. Incredibly close margins as Tycho Hardy came across the line, goes third fastest for himself by, well, immediately before Jan Halliday steals that away and goes third fastest for Team RB.
Indeed, and then next we do have, I think it was one of the Red Bulls, I think it was Liam Stevens, only a 26.0 there for the Red Bull driver. Next we have Barry Bermond here in the Ferrari. He heads up to the line as Hoffland goes 5th. Where can Barry go? Only P6 there for Bermond, a 25.938. Next we have former race winner here around Jeddah, Istvan Pukki to the top by exactly a 10th to Tamas Gale. That should be a time he should be safe to retire on. And then we did see, I think it was the Alpine of Benjamin Conye. Longue goes up into P2. Shanika Clay up into P2 for the Mercedes. Once again, both Mercedes right at the top of the timings here in the mid part of this session. Then we have Luca Rapassa, who's improving a decent chunk on his sector 1 and 2. But of course, that would have been on a used set of the tyres. Where can he go? Only into 11th there with a 26.047. He won't be impressed with that because that's slower than the time he did in Q1.
Yeah, not ideal for Luca Rapassa at the moment. He has got time to build on. Obviously, still got over 4.5 minutes left in this Q2 session. This is only third lap over the course of this session, so still, I mean, time for him to find, but also time for him to find time. If you want to look at it from that sort of perspective, they got one more run in them before we do start to see that checkered flag looming in the distance. But one story I think we have to talk about. Those Mercedes are looking inseparable at the moment. Only 17 thousandths of a second between the two of them. And they are both 1 and 2 once again.
Yeah, Mercedes looking very strong here in qualifying. And if we're not careful, we'll have some of our esports drivers try and say that the Mercedes car is better than all the others, I'm sure. As Joris Krozen, that's a little bit ambitious there, I think, isn't it? P5 and chooses to retire. When you've got the likes of Philippe, who hasn't set a representative time, Luca and Liam, who both set quicker times in Q1 than the likes of Duncan and Barry, two heavy hitters in qualifying, and Joris Krozen thinks he's safe on a 0.792. I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, but I think Joris will be a little bit, well, I think he could certainly be under pressure here.
I think he believes that 6 drivers below him can't go quicker on their final runs, and again, we've seen crazy things happen when the track does start to ramp up, especially towards the end of a qualifying session. We know when the rubber gets laid down, it does get that much quicker over the course of a session, and I think, again, it's going to be incredibly close as to whether he does get knocked out. Maybe he feels that because how close he is to Tamas Gale, that he has that little bit of safety, the only thousands between the two of them. But I think if actually it's the other way round, if it was Tamas Gale retiring early, being a thousandth ahead, he'd be a little bit more comfortable.
Indeed, it's going to be a very questionable ending to qualifying because we've got Philip, who normally we can see make it to Q2 and Q3. Liam Stevens, he's a little bit more of an unknown, I think, in this one, which is safe to say. And then Luca Rapassa, is a driver that also has the pace for Q3, a little bit like a Leo Lund, can, jump into the session and definitely put himself up into that top 10. And then also Barry Burman under a lot of pressure here, heading into the end part of Q2. Of course, only safe by just over a tenth. But of course, that's two drivers that haven't set the best laps that they've done at all this evening. So Barry has a lot of work to do, but then again, we'll say he's under pressure, but he's going to set like a 0.5 or something and be instantly safe. I can guarantee it.
That is the sort of move we quite often expect and do see from Barry Burman. He can quite often pull laps seemingly out of a hat. He's like a magician with a rabbit, and it seems to come out of absolutely nowhere. But we have got drivers coming out for their final out laps, and of course, just a reminder of how it stands. One more qualifying session to go. We've had Cameron Dowd retire through a crash at turn 4. We did have Andre crash at a very similar point just at the end of the second sector, which means we've only got 14 drivers in this qualifying session, or actually down to 13 now, so only 3 drivers, including, or adding 2 Cameron Dowd, will be going for an early shower at the end of this session. And just a reminder, if people are just coming into chat, there is no Jarno driving here this afternoon. He is out karting, I believe, in the real world and touching grass, as we should say.
Yeah, something many of our drivers don't do. Something myself and TK don't do often either, even in the
don't lump me in with you here, Nathan.
Oh, dear me. But no, Jarno isn't back next week either because he's on holiday. So, I mean, I don't know if it's a Maldives or not this time around, but he's going on holiday somewhere, that's for sure. So he'll be back for round 4, hopefully, which is in 2 weeks' time. And hopefully we'll have both of our full-time commentators back. No offence to you, TK. And then, of course, Jarno will be back once again. But we do have our final laps in Q3 underway here. Tamas Gal, once again, going out first. I think he's doing this tactical now, TK, for a bit of airtime.
I mean, if he wants a bit of airtime, all he had to do was ask, because sometimes we do get requests from drivers asking for a little bit more airtime. I know a few of them do want to get those social media clips and the shorts, as they call them. I'm not going to name any names. That'd be outside of the interest of disclosure, but it's one that a few drivers do want to try and get some clips. Obviously, we had a fantastic clip that kind of broke the internet on Wednesday night, but that's the last I'll mention of that one. But Tamas Gal wanting that early airtime here as he makes his way through in towards the second sector.
Indeed, and I'm not going to take that hatred there from Liam Angelo Carrag saying I would probably eat the grass if I could. I mean, technically I can, but yeah, so I like food, but I don't like grass. I think that's safe to say. So don't worry about that, Liam. I'm not going to steal your grass. But here we are, Tamas Gal up by half a tenth in Sector 2, looking to try and make himself even more safer here. Heading into the end of Q2, of course, the checkered flag has been waved. No more laps can be started in this qualifying session, and an early dispatch for Cameron Dowds and Joris Kroos, deciding that P5 was safe for him. Let's see what's going to happen at the end of this session. Tamas Gal, what can he set on the board? Will it be a 25.7? It will be. A 7.78 on the board for him. Stays in P4. Next is Barry Burman, who needs a big lap time here if he wants to be safe and making his way through into the final part of qualified. Up to the line goes P6. That might be safe, but could still fall under pressure. Next is Tycho Hardy in P8. Where can he go? Stays 8th fastest, did find time, but not position. Next we have Philip Presneda in the McLaren. Where can he go? He's out of Q2, stays in P12. Pookie to the top once again for Mercedes. Then next we will have, I think it's the Alpine of Ben Shabakonyi. Can he make his way through to Q3? Yes, he can. P9 for him. Tycho Hardy is out of this session. Longe up into P2. They would stay into a passer. Can he make his way through? No, he can't. He stays P11 and loses out by, that's 4 thousandths of a second. And look at the gap there between Burman and Rapassa. 8 thousandths separating 4 drivers.
Absolutely incredible. Jan Halliday has been saved there, invalidating on his final run in the session, and he does just scrape through in 10th place. We lose Luca Rapassa, Tycho Hardy, Philippe Presneda, Cameron Dowd, and of course Andre that had that crash out in Q1. So there are your 5 drivers that are essentially out in Q3. In Q2. We'll take that little bit of pinch of salt with Andre and Cameron. Obviously, both of them crashing out rather than being forced out through, poor lap times. But Yuka Rapassa, Tycho Hardy, Philippe Presneda, all of those drivers unable to set a lap time fast enough to make their way through to Q3. And we're moments away from that top 10 shootout.
Indeed, we are. What a session that was. And big shame there for, I think, definitely Luca, because I know he's got a lot of pace to make his way into Q3 and normally has quite high ambitions. So a big shame there for Luca. And then, of course, Tycho part of the Kick-Saber team last season in F1 Sim Racing, and then Philip Presneda, a driver that's been around for a very long time in the scene, unfortunately departing in P13. Then Cameron Dowd, what a shame for him, unfortunately. A crash at turn 4 means he won't be making his way through into that final part of qualifying. But of course, now we have the 10 best drivers in the session in Q3. These lap times are going to get even closer, and we can see the top 10 there, TK. Only 2/10 separated, and they're bound to get quicker and closer.
They absolutely are indeed. We'll run through the top 10 for this Q2 session. It's Van Pookie, Nicholas Longay, Chanaka Clay, Duncan Hoffland, Tamas Gal, Liam Stevens, Joris Crozen, Barry Burmond, Bence and Jan Halliday are your 10 drivers that will make their way through to that pole position shootout. As we mentioned earlier, Luca Rapace, Tycho Hardy, Philippe Presneda, Cameron Dowds and Andre are the drivers that miss out on heading through to that final 10 shootout. It's been incredibly close throughout the course of this session and also Q1, but now we head down to that top 10. The track is freer than ever, and probably freer than it will be for the next hour or so. They've got to get this done if they want to try and take pole position.
They certainly have. And TK, I'm going to throw the questions to you before we even get underway. Who is your pole position sitter for round 2 of the championship?
I want to say it's a tough one, but I don't think it really is. I think it has to be Van Pookie. He's looked incredibly strong in both Q1 and Q2. I think he topped the timing charts in both of those sessions, and you know, you'd be silly to try and bet against him. But Nathan, I'll throw the similar question over to you. Who's your money on?
I mean, I'm going to go for the other Mercedes, Chanaka Clay. They just seem better than everyone today. And Chanaka, a driver that I do enjoy watching on my screen, hopefully can look to try and take pole position in that other Mercedes. But guys in the chat, let us know as well who you think will take pole position, the top 10 as it stands. Of course, Liam Stevens, Joris Crozen, Chanaka Clay, Jan Halliday, Duncan Hoffland, Tamas Gal, Ben Shabakonyi, Nicholas Longay, Ist Van Pookie, and then Barry Boromand. The top 10 all looking to try and take that pole position spot, and all looking very consistent so far. They've all been setting very good lap times, all been getting better as the sessions have gone on. So I think pole, we could be possibly looking at a 0.4 here.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. Maybe slightly dipping even lower. Who knows what we could see. Track temperature has dropped though since Q1. We're down to 28 degrees track temperature. Air temperature is roughly around the same, so tyres won't be under as much stress as they have been in the first 2 sessions.
No, it's going to be interesting. I think the times are going to be very close. I think closer than what we've seen so far. We've seen some very close lap times. It's always the way in Q3, isn't it? You know, the drivers have got to extract every little bit out of their car on that final run, and hopefully we'll see a couple of them head out onto the track nice and early. I think some of them that have kind of had to fight for a Q3 spot will have to go on a set of the used tyres, but some of those that, you know, have retired early, the likes of Istvan Pookie, Nicholas Longay, they might be safe to just go out for 2 new tyre runs here, because they probably have saved enough tyres.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the question of how many tyres have our drivers saved over the course of Q1, Q2. We alluded to it earlier, and have they managed to hold back a set? Can they afford to do that second run on a set of the used tyres and still make themselves competitive? And we have got the time already creeping down under 10 minutes, so drivers just waiting for that optimal opportunity. No one really wants to be the first driver out there at the moment because they don't want to take the bounce. They don't want to essentially be the driver to put down rubber for everybody else. So it's a bit of a waiting game, a bit of a chicken game at the moment, waiting to see who blinks first.
Yep, certainly. And there we are. We have a driver out on track. It will be Ist Van Pookie, the first one out on circuits here, of course. The driver that's been probably the quickest all evening long. I think topped Q1 has topped Q2. And well, we'll be looking to do the same again here in qualifying 3. Has been very competitive so far. Has had a decent start to the game overall, I think. Has been in a couple of leagues that I've watched, and he's always up near the top end of things. And of course was very good on F124. This game it's different, but of course has similar qualities in some aspects. So, you know, the same drivers that we saw that were quick tend to be quick once again, and Istvan definitely following through on momentum from last game. So we'll have to see what he can do. Definitely a contender, or the biggest contender for pole position here tonight. But then again, you've got a couple of drivers who probably you wouldn't have expected to see in Q3. The likes of, I think, Liam Stevens on occasion. You know, I've seen Jan Halliday I don't think has been as good so far on the start of this game. So, you know, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but haven't seen much of him either, unfortunately.
No, not one that we've seen kind of up in the top level necessarily. But one thing I did want to just maybe bring up, and I'm not sure if anyone at home maybe caught this. We saw it's Van Pookie. Let's just say being creative with the pit exit line there, crossing it across, maybe just trying to get a little bit of jump on his final run. So alas, one maybe for the stewards if any of the drivers are being a little bit pedantic during Q3, but we have got just over 8 minutes left on the qualifying clock at the moment. Of course, that's the time they have to start their final runs, not necessarily time they have to complete the laps, and that will be a saving grace for a considerable number of our drivers here this afternoon. They will get that little bit extra time just to go around this circuit because it is fast, it is flowing, and it is so physically demanding for the drivers back in their cockpits. But for one final time, folks at home, let us know who you're rooting for, who you think is going to take provisional pole position as we get underway with our opening laps.
Indeed, and Ist Van Pookie, a driver that we should be looking at for the top spot here tonight. Let's see what he can do on his opening run here in Q3. A nice first couple of corners here from the Hungarian driver as we head into turn 4, of course. Place that can claim victims, many a plenty, and this time it will not be for Pookie. He makes his way through quite nicely as he heads through the end of this first sector, and compared to all this, you can see how he marginally touches the wall on occasions. He's got that much confidence in that setup and car. It's a 31.501. I've seen quicker first sectors, but that was just consistent there from Pookie as he makes his way through turn 13 and now into the mid-speed chicane. Of course, once again, right over to the left. Get the car turned in nicely. Flick of the wheel as you hit the curb on the exit and run up now towards turn 22, of course. DRS will be open through this little section and just pushing once more and more, of course, around here in this final sector. This is where you kind of benefit from having a lower wing setup compared to those with a higher wing setup. Let's see how Istvan can do as he now heads his way down to turn 27.
Absolutely down towards the final corner of this circuit. It's make or break for a lap here at Jeddah, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in which we find ourselves here. Man rounds the corner very nice. He used all the track available to him. Doesn't do a Max Verstappen, as we saw a couple of years ago now, and he does come up towards the line to set the first time of the session at 25.669. Definitely room for improvement for a few of our drivers. Liam Stevens, though, cannot go quicker. 26.628 for himself. Tamas Gal, a 25.758 for the Williams outfit for the first time of asking. Barry Burmont, the first driver into the 25.5s for the Scuderia Ferrari. The Aston Martin of Duncan Hoffland just in behind themselves, a 25.7 for the team based in Silverstone, and Bentz comes across the line, a 25.7 for himself as well.
Indeed, and then Jan Halliday, a 26.165. Next we have Joris Krozen up into P3, a 6.85 there for the Dutchman. And next we have Shanneke Clay here, as I think he's... No, we will continue on. I thought he was baiting for the pits for a moment. Where can he go? Only P7 for Shanneke Clay. And finally, we have Nicholas Longe. Can he go to the top? He does go P2, but still, nobody can beat that lap time of Barry Burmond, a 125.537, the only one to get into the 0.5 so far in this session. But look at the gaps. I mean, just from P2 down, it's only around 1.7 tenths between Nicholas Longate and Shanneke Clay. The whole field separated by a second, but Jana and Liam, I presume, are both on a set of the used tyres.
That would be the assumption, at least for myself up here. You can see just how far disconnected they are from the rest of the grid, and obviously they've got room for improvement. They've got a set of the fresh new tyres. They will look to improve in the final run. Just over 4.5 minutes left in this final qualifying session here in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, and the kingdom and the shoreline that we find ourselves, absolutely stunning. But it's advantage to the Scuderia Ferrari at the moment, as Barry Burmond is the fastest, 25.537. And we can have a quick look at the spread across all of the lap times, all of the field, within about 2.5 tenths of a second if we exclude Jan Halliday and Liam Stevens as well. Obviously, with the expectation that they are on a used set of the tyres and they will have one new set to do their final runs on.
Certainly. So a lot of pressure lies on those two, but then the same can go for everybody else, because with the lap times they've set on the board here, they've surely all got at least a tenth in, in their lap times. They've all got a chance to look for pole position. But then if you look at the gaps there just between Tamas Gal and Shanneke Clay, it's only, what, 17 thousandths separating the three? So they've all got, they all know they can make, they can all make 20 thousandths on their lap times. So they've all got a chance to fight for P6 at least. And then, of course, a little bit more time here and there. They've all got a top 5 opportunity. But I think the battle for pole, I'd say, is probably between our top 3. I mean, Joris, I know he's done a very good lap, but Istvan was top in Q1 and 2. And then Nicholas and Barry have all set very competitive lap times here and on their first runs in Q3. So I think the battle for pole is probably with our top three, but I'm still going to stay with my bet of Shanika Clay.
I think that's a fair whack. I'm still going to go with Itzvan Pookie. I think he still can find time throughout the course of the final runs. Just over 3 minutes left. You can see in the top left-hand side of your screen, ample opportunity for our drivers to go and set one final run. And we are expecting, of course, a considerable improvement from Jan Halliday and Liam Stevens, the two drivers that pretty much had to battle their way through, probably more than others, to get through into this Q3 session. Now find themselves with one tyre set to the deficit of pretty much everybody else. But time can be made. And they will make time in the final runs. But we've got 2.5 minutes left on the qualifying session. Let us know in the live chat who you're rooting for, who you think is going to get pole position, because I guarantee both myself and Nathan do have the live chat up, just to keep an eye on those predictions.
Indeed, we do have a couple of cars now making their way out for their final runs in qualifying. First one is one of the favourites for pole, Istvan Pukki, who did the same at the start of Q3, went out nice and early, wanted a little bit of free air, and will permit to a very early qualifying lap. Next we have Barry Burman, who currently is on that provisional pole spot for 25.537. A very nice lap from Barry indeed. Certainly yet again, one of those drivers that, you know, you can always bet for pole position, even if he's down in P10 or if he's up in P1. He can always go for pole position. And then, of course, everybody else as well, just heading their way out onto circuit for one last chance here to try and take pole around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. And I think from what we've seen so far in these past couple of sessions, you know, in Q1 and 2 as well, we're going to have a very interesting race, because we've seen lots of drivers struggle with track limits, with, you know, colliding with a couple of barriers. Of course, we've seen a couple of DNFs as well from hitting the walls, and then drivers, you know, who've made their way to Q3 have also tapped to the wall here and there in a race. You know, a tiny bit of damage can really harm your efforts. So I think we're going to have a very mixed up race heading into this one. But of course, the guy on pole position, I think, you know, he's going to look quite comfortable, because you yourselves and the guy in second and third, because of the dirty air, you could just control the race between you three.
You absolutely can. I think that's one thing our drivers probably will have in the back of their minds heading into the race situation that we have coming up probably in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. So we've got to get Q3 out of the way, and it will be led out by Itzvan Pukki, going incredibly wide into turn 27 there, just to make sure he gets the optimal run down towards turn number 1. And we have got the final runs coming your way here, folks. It will be Itzvan Pukki that kicks us off.
He certainly does. Down towards turn 1 on his final run of the session. Let's see what he can do through here. Nice and composed through the first couple of corners. You can see eager to get on the power straight away. Bit of a rear slide on the exit of turn 3, then in towards turn 4 once again, and just throw the car in and just hope for the best as you head your way through there. And then, of course, to the end of sector 1 you go. Try not to hit that curb as you head into turn number 9. And let's see, is he up in sector 1? He's a 10th.5 behind nearly of Barry Burman. He's up by nearly 10th already in sector 1 alone, and still has 2 tricky sectors to go. Of course, sector 2 is where you gain most of your time. I think it's down in towards this corner here, the chicane of 14 and 15, and then the chicane of 22, 23 and 24, where you can also gain heavy time on your lap.
You absolutely can. It's going to be one of those vital ones. The chicanes are where you can make or break your lap. Keep an eye here on Itzvan Pukki. It's this corner that can be difficult for some drivers. Goes wide and cuts the corner. That's going to be it for Itzvan Pukki. Third place will be the best that he gets after running completely wide at the exit of that corner. Bormund keeps it legal though, and can he look to improve?
Well, he was down by 80 thousandths in sector 1. He's down by 30 thousandths in sector 2, so he's improving as the lap goes on. What can he do, though, in the final sector? That was a little bit touch and go there through the turn 27. Pukki stays third. Could certainly be under pressure from Crozen and those behind. Can Barry extend his lead? Yes, he can! A 25.497 for Barry Burman. Next across the line, it's Ben Shamakonyi. He goes third for the Alpine team. Next is Hamashkal. Can he go for pole? No. Matches the time of Ben Shamakonyi. Next, it's going to be Jan Halliday onto the front row for the Czech driver in the V-Cub. Next, it's Duncan Hoffman. P6 for him only in this session. P8 there for Liam Stevens. Shanika Clay will manage P6 in the Mercedes team. And next we have Joris Krozen and Nicholas Longate. Can Longate go for pole? Yes, he can! By 10,000ths of a second, it's the Aston Martin on pole. Who will he be ahead of? It's Barry Berman in second place. As Joris Krozen only into P8, and you can see there that mistake for Pookie has dropped him down to P10 in this session.
Wow, what an incredible run of events there, right at the death. Nicholas Longate pulling a lap out that we never thought we'd see coming. The Aston Martin starts on pole 9,000ths of a second quicker than Barry Berman. Jan Halliday will start on the second row alongside of Bent. Tamas Gallen and Shanika Clay line up on row 3, with row 4 of Duncan Hoffland and Joris Krozen, and row 5 of Liam Stevens and It's Van Pookie, who had an absolute shocker of a final run here, Nathan, as you alluded to.
Indeed, and I'm not sure if we have a restart here. I think we do. I'm just going to double check if we do have a restart here in WOR T1. But what an ending there to qualifying. Of course, Jan Halliday, I think for me, is the biggest, I wouldn't say surprise, but biggest gainer at that one. P3 behind Nico and Barry, two very competitive drivers, and just ahead of Bench and Tash, who both had very good qualifying sessions themselves. But we will have a restart here heading in towards the race. So let's have a little couple, get my words out. I've had a really, really of a mare tonight. Let's go have a couple of words from our sponsors. Of course, and a big thank you from Gridfinder and Next Level Racing, of course, our two sponsors for this season of WOR PC Tier 1 and all of our other tiers as well we have on the PC and console side. And we are now just heading our way back into the new session, of course, ready for the start of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We'll have a quick look at the results from last time because we had a very interesting race back in round 1 at Austria, where we saw Nicholas Longate take the win ahead of Julian Klappenbach, and then it was Pookie, Ist Van Pookie, who took P3 in that one ahead of Joris Krozen, who's also had a good qualifying here. Then we had Leo Lund and Cameron Dowd, two of our reserves, ahead of Reese Leeton in P7, and then Jack West, Daniele Parodi, and Will Lewis, our top 10, of course, as I mentioned earlier on. Yana Watmere did have a top 10 finish, but because of a penalty removal for Will Lewis, it puts him into the top 10 and demoted Yana Watmere to P11. But I think for Longay, he's on pole. He took a win last time out. That's good for him. We have Pookie, who I think despite that mistake in Q3, still got some top pace and can try and fight back to the top 5. We've got Krozen as well, who finished in P8 in that one. So he's also got an opportunity to move forward. So, those three there who did a very good job in round 1 could definitely repeat and do another great job in round 2 here. And of course, give themselves a bit of a buffer in the championship to the likes of, I think Julian, who, yet again, someone we'd expect to finish at the top a lot of the times. Yana Watmere, who's had a poor couple of rounds, and then saying can go for a couple of our other Tier 1 regulars. So, they've really got to try and take this opportunity as much as they can and get the most points out of it.
Absolutely. There's still opportunities for our drivers to be able to kind of work their way through, come back, and have a bounce back effect from what we saw in the first round, because it's not said and done. We've got a long season to go, and there's a lot more rounds and races where they can try and score those all-important points. And speaking of rounds that we have got still to come, we'll have a quick reminder of how the calendar lines up for the rest of the season. Also, we find ourselves in the moment at Saudi Arabia for round 2. We head to round 3 on August 17th at Australia, Albert Park. What a fantastic venue that's going to be for some racing. Japan and Suzuka, we enter for round 4 with Sao Paulo in Brazil for round 5 on September 7th. We then take a short trip up the coast to Mexico City on September 14th. We head to the home of Grand Prix Racing for round 7 in Great Britain. We then head to Bahrain September 28th with Abu Dhabi at the start of the October stint. Then head to China in October 12th, United States and Texas on October 27th. The Netherlands kicks off our final run and our final month here in PC Tier 1 on November 2nd, with Qatar and Belgium rounding out your 14 race calendar. Nathan, we spoke earlier about kind of roughly what we're expecting from these races and how we're looking for them to go. Out of those rounds, obviously I won't be here for probably the major majority of them. Which one are you looking forward to in terms of racing action?
I think it's difficult because we've got lots of good tracks on there. I think Bahrain's always it's always one of those where the racing isn't ecstatic, but you always have good racing. You've got China as well, that long straight into turn 16. I think with the dirty air, you're going to need a long straight like that with DRS. Then you've got Sao Paulo, always a track that can top, overtakes, battling. You get lots of it around there. And then Mexico as well. We've seen that in the past. I think it was over in Pierre, another good race there. So there's lots of tracks here that are promoting good racing. I think many of them are what we expect to see on the esports calendar whenever that begins. But I think on a whole, it's a very well-rounded calendar. We've kind of got rid of a few of the tracks that drivers don't like commonly, like Monaco, Azerbaijan, tracks that we don't want, they haven't put in. So I think we've got a really decent calendar. I think the only track drivers don't like, I think, is Qatar. I don't know why, but they've never liked it for some reason.
I think that kind of comes down to maybe a little bit of old precedent. You've got to remember Qatar was developed and set up as a MotoGP circuit. Yep. It then was adapted, well, not adapted, but brought into Formula One with that FIA Grade 1 homologation that we saw around the kind of the COVID era. So I think you've kind of got the purists on one side that don't agree with it necessarily being on the calendar to start with. I think it's one of a really good track for racing. It promotes the high speed that we see in MotoGP, brings them across to four wheels in terms of Formula One. But actually, when you combine the two together, you get some thrilling racing there.
You do. I think it's a really good track. It's one for me that's quite flowing to drive. I do enjoy driving the track. Hence, I'm not very good. I'm about, I think, 1.5 seconds off. But it's still a fun track to drive, nevertheless. But of course, we are here in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. Not that far away, actually, from Qatar, only a couple of 100 miles away. And we'll, of course, got to see what the drivers could do around this circuit. Of course, another new circuit, or newer circuit on the calendar, has been here for around 4 years. Has been on WOR1 as well for the past 5 seasons, ever since he got introduced to the game. So Luke must like this track a lot. The drivers do like it, I think, but they don't always like it when it comes to racing, because it is chaotic, isn't it? Especially on the last game, F1 24. I don't think it was even fair to call it an F1 race when you had 3 and 4 cars side by side into turn 27 consistently.
It's certainly made for an interesting viewing experience. I'll probably put it to that one as well. But I just want to speak more about the country at the moment. Obviously, you had, I want to say, the distinct pleasure of actually getting to go to Saudi Arabia, a couple of weeks ago now, and doing some work for the Esports World Cup. And how was that experience? Because it must have been just fantastic from your point of view to be able to go to this place that now hosts a Formula One race.
I mean, going to Saudi Arabia itself, it was a long journey, there and back. It was about, I think, 30 hours in total, because things went wrong, we'll put it that way. Waiting times went through the roof unexpectedly, but no, being in there was great. I mean, people said to me online, oh, you're just saying this for, for tweets, whenever you've been paid to say it, but I really thought it was a nice country. Really enjoyed it there. The locals are brilliant. They was quite respectful to see, English people there, people from other parts of the world. Really enjoyed it. The Esports World Cup as well. What an experience. If anyone has a chance to go, please take that opportunity. It was brilliant. I know, obviously I was there for Red Sport, so it was something that was a little bit, more up my alley, but on a general note, it was a brilliant event. When I went into the Valorant arena, because that was on the same, Valorant or Apex Legends, that was on the same one. It was like walking into like a football arena. You got people, you know, with all the big flags in the air, the big boards chanting, and the big screen and all the shouting. It was honestly really good experience. So I'd recommend it. And I think it being in somewhere a bit more different to, you know, obviously our English culture made it even better. So many different things to explore and try out. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And of course, home to a Formula One race. Unfortunately, it was in Riyadh, not Jeddah, so I couldn't go and see the track. Otherwise, I would have loved to head over there. But I did have a couple of friends who went to Diriyah, which is only a couple of miles up the road, which hosts, I think, used to host one of the Formula E races, if I'm correct.
Yeah, absolutely did. And again, a fantastic circuit in its own right. One that I hope that we do see more series start to adopt. Obviously, I think there's maybe a general wave of displeasure as we see sort of more... I don't want to speak too much for too many people, but obviously as we see more countries coming into a lot of these race calendars across Formula or across multiple disciplines and formulas, and we've got a lot of people that are potentially the purists kind of go, oh, it should be Hockenheim, it should be Nürburgring, and those sort of drivers. And actually, I love seeing races go into different countries. I think when Vietnam was announced, it's probably one of my favourite tracks I was really looking forward to. Obviously, it never really came into contention, but I love that as a sport and as a fan base, we can grow, we can go experience new cultures, because that is one thing that brings this entire community together.
I think for me, one of them examples is Azerbaijan. Yeah. A country that you'd look at, like Formula One races, you got, you know, England, France, all those, Belgium, whatever. Azerbaijan's one that you don't really expect to see, but I think, you know, apart from the fact the track's a little bit boring, I think it's always hosted a great race. People actually travel out there quite a lot as well, just for the general Baku nightlife. Apparently it's quite good, the nightlife in Baku, I've heard, so I don't know. But no, it's nice to see other countries get involved into the world of sport and not only keep it European. I don't like the Americanization of it, but I like other cultures getting involved.
Absolutely, and I hope one day that I get the opportunity to go out to some of these, I don't want to say more kind of out of the way circuits, but ones that aren't typically in the Europe kind of sphere. Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm quite a, you know, I've been to Europe and I've been to countries in and around here, but I haven't necessarily been further afield, partly because I'm not a massive fan of flying, but also partly because I just haven't been able to venture that far, and I want to be able to go do that, and could do it in conjunction with Formula One. But folks, do not worry too much whilst we're rambling out here. We are about to go racing. We are back on the grid for the night race at Saudi Arabia, the lights that will shine down on the coastline of Jeddah, because it is absolutely a spectacle to watch here, both physically and also virtually as well.
Indeed, we haven't got long to go. Looking at the race director, I'm seeing a lot of medium tyres being used, which means I presume medium hard as always. I don't think it's a two-stop around here, because I know that the deg's not that high compared to other tracks, so I presume a one-stop for our drivers here. Of course, if safety cars go into the equation, then things could change, but I think for the majority of it, you know, strategies, it should just be a medium hard one stop. But I can see a couple of drivers opting for a hard tyre.
I think it's potentially to be expected. We've got the go-ahead from Race Control, also known as Luke Humphreys, who has given his blessing for this race to start, as I can see down in the driver's chat just on my bottom monitor there. So we have got the green flag flying at the back of the grid, and we now wait for all of our drivers just to ready up, make sure their setups and their strategies are tuned to perfection. Obviously, get the fuel load completely optimal. But obviously, you mentioned safety cars. Safety cars can run, I believe, here in Tier 1. That's what is the major difference between the red and the blue, let's put it that way. And we have got lights above our grids, though. We are going immediately. No formation lap for our drivers. 5 lights are lit here in Jeddah. And under the lights, we go racing. It's a good pull away from Nicholas Longe. Barry Borman will have the inside line, but he's had a bit of a slow start. Jan Halliday and Bent's going side by side through the first corner. Shadaka Clay and Tamas Gal getting involved as well. Duncan Hoffland and the Red Bull. I believe that was Luca Rapasa, who's gone dropping down the order as we had front wings and carbon fibre going flying as we head through the first few corners. Too wide is not advised in this part of the circuit. It's incredibly tight and twisty as we keep an eye up and down the field. All of our drivers keeping it nice, cool, calm and collected. Everybody's just playing the patient game. We enter into the infamous train that we have here in Saudi Arabia through the incredibly long banked corner. Duncan Hoffland gets the better of Tamas Gal, who thinks about sticking a nose to the inside as we exit out of the corner. Doesn't so, and the Williams will have to settle for P7 for now.
Indeed, and unfortunately, it is Tamas Gal, the one who has got damage on his front wing. His front left end plate is gone on that Williams. A big shame for him here at the start of this race. And then we can see further ahead there for a moment, Shabakonyi has came under pressure here from Shanika Clay further back. Preshnada is ahead of Andre Marnar. He moves up into 14th. Gabel Chontos down to 20th. Of course, did make a couple of positions on the start, but opted for a set of the hards, and of course, because of that, has dropped down a couple of spots early on. As we do see in that midfield as well, Joris Krozen looking to make a move to get ahead of Tamas Gal, who taps the back of Duncan Hoffen through the final couple of corners and back down to turn one. We go, and already cars are moving out to the slipstream. They want no dirty air at all. They want to calm that engine down, cool it down, as we do see Presneda up into P12, Cameron Dowd down to P13.
Lots of moves further back as well. Leo Lund to the inside of the first corner. If you know Leo Lund, he loves that cheeky move to the inside late on the brakes, and a little bit of contact with Wojciech as well, but he manages to make his way through safely. Tamas Gal having a good scrap with Joris Krozen as well, further forward for 7th and 8th respectively, as Liam Stevens, of course, stepping in as a reservist here this afternoon, wants to try and fight his way forward. Started just slightly, well, exactly where he is at the moment, up in P9, and has got to try and fight his way through as it's Van Pookie moving just to the outside, trying to call some of the engine off. Ishmael Fassi to the inside of Andre Milner. There he goes for the dive to the inside, gets it done, and Ishmael Fassi, who started all the way down in P20, if you can remember, or P18, after penalties were applied, he's up 3 positions already here, Nathan.
Indeed, a great move there by Ishmael Fassi up into P15, looking to try and push on early in this Grand Prix. And then I can see further ahead as well, Shanika Clay on a couple of occasions has closed in on bench Shabakonyi, but never enough to make a move. He's going to push again. Battery being utilised here by Shanika Clay. Bench as well, gaining in on Jan Halliday, who's also had a good start in this race. So are we going to see any moves down in towards that final corner? Nothing being made just yet, unless we have Liam Stevens looking to go around the outside of Joris Krozen. Couldn't make it stick and stays in P9 for now. He's burning the battery once again to look to make a move in towards turn 1, but has fell under pressure here from possibly Van Pookie, but goes up the inside of Krozen. Can he jump up into P80? Yes, he can. What a move there by Liam Stevens. Making a charge forward is difficult, but never mind when it's ahead of Joris Krozen. A very difficult driver to pass. Liam's got the move done.
Certainly does indeed. Bence wanted a position there potentially on the Al Halliday as well, as he looked to the inside as we make our way in towards that second sector. The first is going to be a distant memory for all of our drivers. Are already 3 laps into this Grand Prix. It goes by incredibly quickly, just the pure pace and the pure nature that we find ourselves here at Jeddah. Shanna Clay on the back of Bence as well. We got a move from Van Pookie trying to send a move to the inside of Joris Krozen, trying to swing it still. The inside line tends itself. Can he try and get the move complete? They're still wheel to wheel. It's Van Pookie's ahead.
What a move there by Esteban. I was starting to think then for a second, has Joris got damage? But no, just hadn't quite got the pace there to defend from Pookie and Rapassa as well. Looking to make a move past Joris Krozen as I'm watching P5 here. Shanika Clay had a run on Shabakonyi, but chose just to opt back and stay in P5 for now rather than make a lunge in towards turn 22. But they all start to close in once again as we head down towards the final corner to begin lap 4 of 25. Further back as well, we do see Stevens looking to charge forward again, and this time he's looking to get ahead of Tamas Gal. What a start this has been here by Liam Stevens, but that time around couldn't quite get the move done as we head our way back down to turn 1. Let's see who's looking to make moves. We have Ben Shabakonyi closing in. He's not good enough though to make an overtake. And further back as well, Joris Krozen, he's up the inside here of Luca Rapassa trying to defend that top 10 spot. I think Luca there got tapped from behind or possibly lost a bit of the rear there on the exit as we head our way down to turn 4. And Krozen still urges ahead.
Yeah, just holds on by the barest of margins. Rapassa will not take that lightly, though. We've seen quite often in races gone by, Luca Rapassa is one of those drivers that wants to try and get past, whether it means crashing out or not. And I think you could see a cheeky move to the inside. Further behind them, Ishmael Fassi up 5 positions on the back of Philippe Presneda, looking to go to the inside of this sweeping left-hander. Again, a favourite overtaking spot instead. He switches to the outside, which looks rather scot-free. Had a little bit of a wiggle on the exit, but they are still wheel to wheel as they run in towards the second sector. Not a place you want to go side by side. Fair racing though between the two of them. I think Fassi just had to back out. Oh, they're both into the wall, and the Scuderia Ferrari has damage.
Yep, that's heavy damage on that front wing for Ishmael Fassi. I think that was a little bit too far there from Philip, and unfortunately Isma ends in the wall, and I think that's his race done. He's down to P20 already. There's no turning on that car whatsoever. That aero at the front is absolutely gone there for Ishmael Fassi. What a shame for him. Would not have wanted the race to end in that way, that's for sure. Then we have Back further ahead, Stevens looking to close in again and make a move on Tamashgal. Looked for it last time, couldn't make it work. Can he make it work here, heading on to lap 5 of 25? He's going to go to the outside here of the Williams, but not close enough to make a move, and I think Ishmael there will be race over into the pits for the Spaniard, and big shame there, of course, for Ishmael, but he went for a bit of a dodgy move, and unfortunately, he paid the consequence.
Looks like he is sticking it out. Typically, we'd expect them to have retired by now, and he is going to come back out of the pit lane, hard tyres on to see this race out. Started on the mediums, of course, so can go for that pit strategy. Front wing has been replaced. They took the opportunity to try and put his way back through. Whether he's going to be able to or not, we question that. We could still see a safety car, and we could still see the field bunch back together and come to the favour of that Scuderia.
Indeed, I mean, I'm surprised Ishmael didn't end up binning it there completely, because that car was properly into the barriers at around 150 miles an hour, so very lucky to come away scot-free there for Ishmael Fassi. Of course, he did have to change his front wing, but that could have ended a lot worse for the Spaniard. And then we do have, once again, Shanika Clay uses a tactic of just closing up to Shabakonyi in towards turn 22, and then, of course, really wants to try and get a good run out of the corner to go for a move into the final corner here. Let's see what Shanika Clay can do, but yet again isn't quite close enough to make an overtake. And now we do have Ist Van Pookie in P9 looking to get ahead of Liam Stevens, who's been trying to get ahead of Tamas Gal. And this time around he waited a bit too long and unfortunately has invited Pookie for a move, and up into P8 goes the Mercedes, who started P10 in this race. The other Mercedes sits in P5 currently, as we head our way back down to turn 1, and Wojtek Steg and Gamel Chontos looking to move forward a little bit now. So are those hard tyres starting to head into a bit of nice form here?
I wonder if it's more a case of the medium starting to drop off. Andre Miona's into the towards the pit lane, and it will be on to a fresh set of tyres after doing only 5 laps on a set of the medium. So I wonder either if that's damage on the Haas car or whether the tyres are starting to drop off. I wouldn't have expected quite this early. Only 5 laps out of 25 lap Grand Prix. Surely he's not going to try and go for 20 laps on the hard tyres voluntarily. But you never know. I've seen wilder strategies performed and pulled off successfully before. I think that's worth pointing out. They can happen, but I think you do need a certain set of circumstances in order to try and make that move work.
Yeah, you certainly do, but we'll have to see what the strategy is for Andre, whether it's a one stop to the end or possibly another pit stop during the course of this Grand Prix. But of course, many times in the past this race has always been a one stop, but always time for try something different here in this one, as we do see Gamble Chontos there was looking for a move on Leo Lund. That was a bit of an audacious one in towards turn 22, but yet again just chooses to back out and not go for the move. But yeah, these hard tyres certainly looking a lot quicker. Only 6 laps into this stint, so yeah, those on the medium certainly could be under a bit of pressure here in this one. But of course, up at the front, it's still Longe that leads Burmond in this one. Is anybody going to pit early in this one? I think that most of them are going to stay out. Yes, they are. So no one opted to go early, bar Andre Marnar in this one. And Liam Stevens again on the back of Tamas Gal. And as I say that, Tycho Hardy is in early.
Yeah, interesting call from a few of the back markers here, maybe trying to go for the undercut, but it is a very early pit stop here, especially for a few of our drivers. Of course, Tamas Gal still running that wing damage that he picked up slightly earlier on in the Grand Prix. Front left end plate missing for the Atalassian Williams racing car, who's stuck just behind Ist Van Pookie, just ahead of Liam Stevens. Ishmael Fassi sets the fastest lap of the race on a set of the hard tyres. Of course, cast your mind back 2 laps, he suffered that wing damage and put on a fresh set of the hard tyres. Will start to go again and has gone fastest out of anybody at the moment, a 29.8 for the Scuderia Ferrari, only a couple of seconds off the back of Tycho Hardy. And bear in mind that he had a whole front wing replacement, so that is an incredible and bold, optimistic move for Fassi to be able to pull back through the field like that.
It certainly is, as we make our way lap 7 of 25, nearly a third of the way through this race, and it's been an interesting one so far. We've had a couple of bits of contact here and there, a bit of wing damage. We've had a couple of drivers try a completely different strategy entirely, but most of them are all on the same one, the top 14, all in that trying to go that. Of course, the Gabor and Wojtek Steg behind, but of course those two going for the hard tyres onto a set of the mediums rather than a medium onto a set of the hards here in this one, as we head our way down towards 27 once again. And of course, as we expected at the front, the gaps had increased quite quickly to around 5, 6, 7 tenths here in this one, because of course you've got to first of all move out the way from that dirty air. Of course that can overheat the engine, or at least make the engine hotter, and then also just with the way the dirty air works, you can't really follow as cleanly. As we do see Stevens and Croson in early as well onto a set of the hard tyres. Now, where does Molnar come out compared to these two? Has that undercut worked here for Andre Molnar? I think it has. He's up to, well, technically the provisional lead of the race.
Yeah, I think he absolutely is. You can see his bypass there. We got Ismail Fassi coming off the back, and you can see just how close he's caught up. And that is absolutely flying for the Scuderia. Bear in mind, he had wing damage for, what, half a lap, had a wing replacement, and now he's, what, 2.5 seconds off the back of the drivers that are pitted that much earlier than the rest of the field. I think this is showing that the undercut is incredibly powerful here at Jeddah, has worked for Ismail Fassi, or is working to try and pull him back in to the threshold of attacking. But look at Liam Stevens, who's fallen 2.5 seconds behind Andre Milner, who bit the bullet so much earlier than the other drivers that he stands in front of.
Yep, this could be a big race here for Andre Molnar. Sorry for cutting you off there, Tika. I thought you finished talking. I got a little bit too ahead of myself on that one. But no, this could be a really good strategy for Andre. Of course, pitting earlier on, and he's only got a 2-lap offset compared to Liam Stevens. Surely that's not going to affect his pace that much. I mean, he's actually gained on Liam over these past couple of laps.
That he has. Joris Krozen gets past Tycho Hardy for the battle down in the P18. We're watching here Wojciech linking him out a move to the inside of Gabor. Of course, the hard tyres really starting to work their way up. Nico Longe into the pit lane, as is Jan Halliday, Bent, Shanika Clay, a whole host of drivers diving into the pits. The Williams of Ika as well further down. So lots of drivers biting that bullet, going for the earlier stop compared to some, and seeing just how powerful that undercut has been over the course of this early race. We're doing about 8-9 laps on a set of the medium tyres. A lot of drivers choosing to stay out. Everybody in the top 7 all rocking the mediums. We got 8th and 9th, Gabor and Wojciech running the hard tyres, and everybody else that's pit is now on the hard tyres, so it is going to see that race out. Wojciech and Gabor have got an interesting conscience call to make here. Do they try and go long, but how long do they try and hold this out for? Are they maybe hoping and praying for a safety car to give them that relief?
I mean, surely they've just got to go as long as possible and, you know, just hope for the best. Maybe they're going to go for, I don't know, it's going to be a difficult one what they choose to go for here. I think it's an odd strategy, but they're going to try and make something different work. Possibly, like you said, hope for a safety car. And, of course, pit onto a set of the mediums that go to the end. But strategy-wise, for the normal strategy, this has worked out very well for Longe because he's came out ahead of Andre Molnar. And, of course, then you can see the likes of Shabakonya. He's nearly lost that DRS to Jan Halliday. So this is very good here for Nicolas Longe. Has a bit of a buffer, possibly. Could even try and break DRS here to Andre Molnar and those behind, as that gap did go up to 9.5 tenths, but wasn't enough to break that 1 second gap. And surely, if you're Jan Halliday, you want to get that move done very early and very quickly because, of course, Molnar will have a little bit less pace compared to those on the newer tyres. As Ika Boehner, unfortunately, a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings as Halliday gets the move done. Up into net P2 in this race. And then we do see as well Hoffland, Pookie and Leo Lund all up for the pits.
Yeah, Jan Halliday having a bit of a troublesome time on those hard tyres. Had a bit of a squirm coming through the middle of the second sector into the third sector. It wasn't quite as plain sailing as he would have liked. You've seen just how powerful this undercut has been. Look at all the drivers that are falling behind. The likes of Longe, Halliday, Milner, that just pulling through the order on those tyres. Yes, they'll have a slight disadvantage at the end, only by a couple of laps, but we know just how powerful track position is here in Jeddah, and it's really working for them at the moment. Barry Burman, though, on the other hand, has completely checked out of this race. He's 5.5, nearly 6 seconds ahead of Rapasa Dowd's Prejnada as the chasing trio that it stands at the moment, and he's really starting to make this work for him.
Yeah, certainly. I think Barry's now kind of decided he's going to go for a bit of a hurry up, you know, put a little bit of pace down, get as much as he can out of these medium tyres and go into a set of the hards, and of course then plan to go to the end. But of course he'll have such an offset over the likes of Molnar, Stevens, Hardy, where he could make something work here. He could just try and charge his way through and, you know, make some moves. But I think if he wants to get to the likes of Nico and Jan and Bench, he's got to kind of hold it out a little bit more because of 1 tyre offset. You know, it's not enough, I don't think, here, if he wants to make that work, especially considering how far he'll drop down from those guys. Because, I mean, compared to Nicolas Longe, he's only 15 seconds ahead, so he'll drop down right to the back of the field, pretty much, once he makes his pit stop. So he's got to try and build that offset before making a stop here in this race. And then, of course, for Luca, Cameron and Philip, they're in a little bit of a troubling situation anyway, because they're just going to fall right to the back and probably not even be within DRS of Ismail Fassi.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you've almost got a pit following everybody else, much to the disdain of Jake Benham, who has joined us in the live chat over on YouTube as well, making rather comments about why is everyone following each other into the pits, and it's a rather boring watch, which is
I agree.
an element, shall we say, of F1 sim racing, just with how pit stops work, and Formula 1 in general. There's no one that knows that probably better than himself, but it's a tough challenge, isn't it? You've got to try and time that strategy right, and when people maybe pull that undercut somewhat unexpectedly, because we've got a lot of drivers in here that aren't regulars in Tier 1, they aren't drivers that, or faces that we see very often, that can add that element of surprise to everybody else's strategy.
I mean, look at Molnar. Went early, very early, and I think that pit stop then said to all the drivers, right, we've got to pit because Molnar and whoever else goes in with him are going to get an advantage. And look where he's came out in this. He's P3, and actually quite comfortably P3 as well. Shabakuni's not really posed a challenge. He's not lost or dropped off on the back of Halliday. He's in a very good spot here in this race to possibly go for a podium. If not, still could be points on the card for him if he carries on the way he is in this race. And as I say that, he makes a mistake and Bench gets past him. I'm not going to bother talking anymore.
Yeah, made a mistake through the chicane where we saw that infamously big crash in F1 Sim Racing last year, and I think just allowed Bench through, maybe in the interest of sportsmanship and fairness, because I think he did potentially hold on to that position by running off into the track limit. So fair sportsmanship, fair racing by Andre there to allow the Alpine through, and of course he won't allow them to try and run away into the distance. He will try and chase them down over the course. Felipe Prisneda comes in towards the pit lane. He will drop down, as you alluded to, all the way down to P20. Had a small moment with the barrier at the same corner just a couple of laps ago. Very fortunate that the car wasn't thrown off into the barrier on the other side of the circuit. It was just a little love tap and maybe a reminder that he has to get fresh tyres at some point during this race.
Certainly, and I'm noticing there, that's a bit of a surprise. Pookie there was struggling to keep within a second. At a moment was 1.1 down from Hofland, so it's not been the best start here for Pookie on this second stint on the hard tyres as he makes his way through it. Oh, I think that was contact there between Crozen and Hofland, because I saw them both nearly squeezed into the barriers. Hofland gets ahead into P12 ahead of Crozen, and look at Pookie right on the back of them now. Has caught up a good couple of tenths through turn 13 into turn number 14 and 15. And as we look further ahead once again, of course, Liam Stevens as well, who went for an early pit stop. He currently sits net P5 in this race, ahead of Shanika Clay, who's had a decent race himself, of course, qualified up in, I think it was P6, currently sits P6 net race position, so it hasn't been too bad for him, as we do see Borman finally go to the pits. Of course, he's looking for that offset to those at the front. Has got a 6-lap offset to Molnar, 3-lap offset to Nicholas Longay. He's just got to put some pace down and hope that it can work out, but he'll drop down here to probably 18th or 19th as Pookie takes the fastest lap of the Grand Prix.
Gets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, gets a move on Crozen as well in towards the first corner. We saw that just being set up as we were watching Barry Bowman trundle down the pit lane towards the exit. Comes out in P12, does the Scuderia Ferrari. Pookie up to P10 though, as he sent that move late on the brakes. Fantastic stuff from Istvan Pookie to try and get the position further up a field. And of course we've got the drivers up towards the top. Nicholas Longay essentially in net P1, the only driver, or the leading driver, to have made their early pit stop, only 3.2 seconds off the back of Wojciech, and of course Gabor slightly further up the field by a couple of seconds. But that's why we're talking about second, third, fourth, and we're all talking about net position here once all of our drivers do come into the pit stop. We're waiting for the top two, but the only drivers yet to pit in this race.
Indeed, and of course they're trying something different. Maybe they're trying to hold drivers up. I'm not sure who to be helping here, but you know, that possibly could be their tactic, because I mean they're 2 seconds, well, at least, you know, Wojciech's only 2 seconds ahead of Nicholas Longay. Gabor's 4 seconds ahead. It's not like they've got much of a chance here of looking for some decent points in this one. So odd strategy indeed for these two, but of course if it works out, you know, fair play to them. As we do see, I think it was Barry Burman there making a move ahead of Joris Crozen up into P11 for him. And then of course we do see Luca Rapace making moves. Of course he was one of those who stayed out a little bit longer in this one and is going to have to try and fight his way forward. Next on his list will be Presneda, and then he has a little bit of free air, but only a couple of tenths of that, and then he'll be back into that train of those up towards the front.
Certainly will do indeed, and Presneda's lost DRS to Ismail Fassi in front. That's allowing an overtake easily for Luca Rapace. They're up to 17th place. Now the Alpine can try and challenge further forward to Fasci. He's got about one or two tenths to try and overcome before the next DRS zone really comes into contention. We do see Cameron Dow's there getting past Ica slightly further back as well. So moves are being made up and down this field as they sort of get themselves back into that comfort zone with the new tyres they've bolted on. Every driver at the moment on a set of hard tyres. How often do you see that in a race? And Of course, we've got 2 drivers still to pit further up the field. Gabor and Wojciech still starting on the hard tyres. Have done 13 laps on them, so that would be a good indication to the rest of the field as to how long they're able to go on a set of the hard tyres comfortably.
Of course, as we do see here, Barry Berman right on the back of Pookie, of course. Pookie pitted 3 laps earlier, and now Barry Berman should just fly past him once they head down to the final corner or potentially down towards turn 1 as Rapassa gets past Ismail Fassi up into P16 for the Alpine driver as we go back down towards turn number 27. And of course, as you mentioned, Andre Molnar unfortunately has lost DRS. This is an opportunity here for Liam Stevens to make some moves in this race. Same goes for Clay, Hofland, Berman, who gets up into P10 ahead of Ist van Pookie. And this is really good for Berman if he can try and dispatch some of those near the top a lot quicker, of course, because of Liam being 1 and a bit behind from Ben Shabakonyi, Halliday and Longay. If Berman can't get past these quickly, that gap's going to be easily over a second, and then he's got a lot of work to do to get back within it. So he's got to make moves quickly. Interesting
call here. Andre's just gone into the pits for the second time. New set of hard tyres going onto the car of Haas, but he's only done 9 laps on the first set of the hard tyres. Is that maybe an indication that they're not doing too well? Obviously, we saw Wojciech go in. He's on 14 laps. Obviously, wouldn't have got to the end as it currently stands. Gabor will be doing 15 laps as a minimum unless he doesn't come into the pits at the end of the last lap. But is that an indication from Andre Molnar there that the hard tyres aren't doing the lengths that they're expecting them to go here?
I mean, that's interesting because, of course, Tucker Hardy as well followed him into the pits. So if they can't make the full race distance, some of these drivers like Liam Stevens and possibly even Longay, Halliday and Shabakonyi, they could come under a little bit of pressure and falling into potential puncture range if that's the case for Molnar and Hardy. As Cameron Dowd jumps up into P14 ahead of Tamas Gal. Of course, he was one of those as well who stayed out a little bit longer here. And, as, you know, he's going to have that offset and look to just push forward himself, of course, towards the end of the race. Those near the front are really going to struggle with their tyres. Whereas Cameron and Luca and Barry are going to have a little bit more of an easier time as into 13th goes down. And Leo Lund there looking to try and get ahead of Joris Krozen for P10 in this race. And Joris opting for the pit lane.
Yeah, a couple of drivers.
And Gabor Chontos.
Yeah, Gabor getting the hard tyres off, and it's going to be a second stop for Joris Krozen. He stopped slightly earlier on as well, went from mediums to hards, done 8 laps on the set of the hards. Ica retires after that earlier contact in the earlier carnage, and that is in the pit lane. So no safety car will be required for that early retirement, but will drop down, be classified as P20 in the order. Won't be classified in the order, actually. Funny correction on my part, as he does retire without completing 90% of the race.
Indeed, and then we do see as well Pookie on the back of Liam Stevens. Of course, as this race goes on earlier on, a 2-lap offset wouldn't have been the biggest, but as the tyres start to degrade more, that offset starts to become a little bit more significant. And now Pookie has had a couple of opportunities to try and get ahead of Liam Stevens, but just hasn't been able to bite the bullet at the right time here as the Hungarian, as we head our way back down towards turn 22. And Shanna Clay for a moment there has lost that DRS to Ben Shabakonyi. Needs to try and get it back as quick as possible. Isn't going to have enough there for DRS, I don't think, on this occasion. Let's see, does that rear wing open on the Mercedes? Yes, it does, just about there. I don't know how he's managed that, but just at the last moment, has he got that rear wing open? And then, of course, Shabakonyi for a moment was also looking to make a move on Jan Halliday.
Pretty much everybody, I think, just finding their own feet at the moment. Nicholas Longay, of course, leading, but still within DRS range of all the drivers. Slightly further behind, it's going to be Barry Berman that still wants to try and put his way through. It's Van Pookie gets the better of Liam Stevens with the helping hand of DRS. We see Duncan Hofland going for a move here on Shanaka Clay to the inside of that second corner, forced almost across the entirety of the curb. Does well to recover that Aston Martin, but for a moment there, Duncan Hofland could have been sent into the barriers as the space was, well, the door was well and truly shut amongst him.
It certainly was, as we continue our way on. Lap 17 of 25, so 8 laps to go in this Grand Prix. And our top 3 looking quite comfortable at the moment to secure the podium, but the likes of Barry Berman are looking to make moves early and get into that top 5 before those last couple of laps, and then he can look to make a dart and possibly look to jump on the podium himself, looking to make a move ahead of Duncan Hofland. He's scaring the Dutchman as they head in towards turn 14 and 15. Of course, you can see there, sent Duncan in a little bit uneasy, and now Barry could have an opportunity. Can he get ahead as they go down towards turn 22? No, you can see he's on the back of Duncan, pushing him as they head into the corner. but this time around no opportunity for him to take. Let's see, can he make a move to the final corner, because he needs to be making these moves quickly. If he can't get past Duncan, he's got no chance when he gets to those further ahead. To the outside goes Burmond. Can he get into P5? He certainly can. Of course, Duncan should try and send it back, but hasn't got enough grip on the brakes, and into P5 goes Barry Burmond, and now has 4 cars to get past if he wants to try and claim victory after going very long on those set of the mediums at the start of the race.
Yeah, of course, quick reminder, if you are just joining us before we see Istvan Pukki maybe trying to send a move on Duncan Hoffland as well, sticks a nose in towards the first couple of corners, but Pukki's unsuccessful at the moment. Just going back to what I was saying, it was going to be 12 laps on a set of the soft medium tyres, but Barry Burmond too wide, doesn't end well through the second chicane, and Duncan Hoffland sent spinning around there. The Aston Martin gets the car pointing in the right direction, but that was overly aggressive by Istvan Pukki, sent the Aston Martin with absolutely no space to go, and Duncan drops down the order, left, right and centre.
Well, I think it was clear that Pukki wanted the move. I think he made that very clear to us, that he wants to be in P6. A big shame there for Hoffland. Of course, has technically helped the race for those further behind, because Cameron Dowds has now got a dose of DRS, and Duncan as well has also got DRS. So this brings that train back into one again instead of 2 little trains in this race, as we do see Rapassa has flew up the grid and now is on the back of Leo Lund. Of course, these two have had a bit of a past when it comes to side-by-side racing, so we'll have to see how that one goes, as we do see Liam Stevens also fall under pressure from Leo Lund himself in P7 in this one. Has had a decent race, as Liam of course started, I think, up in the top 10 and has now got himself a comfortable P7, but of course all those further behind are looking to make moves, as Cameron Dowds lunges ahead of Duncan Hoffland and goes up into that top 10 after a poor qualifying after hitting the wall at turn 4. Started 14th, now he's into the top 10 and looking for some points.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a knock to the confidence for Duncan Hoffland. We see Luca Rapassa and Leo Lund going at it in towards the first corner again, too wide between the Alpine and the Papaya McLaren. They still run wheel to wheel on the exit of the corner as well, but it is going to be Leo Lund that gives up the ghost. Rapassa gets the move made up for P8, almost a little bit of contact between the two again. It's Lund that has to slam on the brakes just ever so slightly more than he was expecting, and that's dropped him right off the rear of that Alpine car. It's fantastic racing that we're seeing here this afternoon. Drivers going too wide through some of the corners. Sometimes it works, sometimes it hasn't been as successful for all of our drivers. But keep an eye on Barry Burmond here. He's in P5. He's got Shanika Clay just a couple of tenths up the road as we run through that elongated left-hander. The banking helping him out to try and hold on to the outside line. We head into the fast and more technical second sector. Can we see that Scuderia Ferrari try and push his way through, potentially force Clay into an early mistake?
I mean, he's got to get that move done soon, hasn't he? He can't just spend lap after lap sitting behind Shanika. If he wants to be up in the top 3, he's got to make moves soon, and you can see there a perfect exit by Barry Burmond. Of course, could have been a little bit tactical there, just to drop off the back of Shanika Clay slightly and not have as much of an effect from that dirty air. But of course, down to 27, it means he's got to push a lot more with the battery and, you know, carry a lot more top speed into the corners. And that time around, no move being made as we head our way back down to turn 1 here, as we begin lap 20 or 25. 5 to go in this Grand Prix, and our top 3 has been the same top 3, I think, pretty much all race here. As Barry Burmond makes a late send into turn, once again ahead of Clay. Taps the back of Shabakonyi in the process, but does get ahead there of Shanika Clay up into P4 for Barry. I thought that was a bit of an audacious send. Either way, he's got the move done, and now can set starts on the podium as Ismail Fassi. Well, it's not been the best race, I think that's safe to say.
Well, started 18th, will be finishing on the leaderboard as 19th. Obviously will not classify. Also doesn't finish 90% of the race distance. But what a move from Burmond. We just saw it was Clay that went, I think, a little bit defensive, or maybe trying to attack Bentz in towards the first corner. Burmond spotted the opening and sent the car. He had to commit to that move, otherwise it was going to go horribly wrong. Got it absolutely correct and finds himself up in P4. He's got Bentz just ahead of him. He's on 11 lap old hard tyres compared to Burmond's 7, so he does have the tyre advantage on the top 3 at the moment.
Indeed, as we, of course, do see Ishmael's car head back onto track. Hopefully it pulls over soon. I don't really want them catching up to it as they all enter through that first sector. Oh, Shanika there taps the wall through 22. That allows Pukki to go over the inside. That could have ended in contact, but great work there for the 2 Mercedes, and Pukki up into P5. Shanika is still sticking alongside. Will look to try and fight his teammate in towards the final corner. Has that inside line, but Pukki with better tyres slightly has a better exit and jumps up into 5th place. A great move there by Pukki, making an advantage of drivers' mistakes as we head our way back down to turn 1. And Burman still with a 4-lap offset compared to Shabakonyi, Halliday and Longay. He's looking to try and make something work as Leo Lund defends from Dowds. Up into P9 goes the kick Sabre, as still looking to work his way forward. Has been a decent race by Cameron Dowds. I think the same can go for a passer who dropped down to 11th on the first lap. And also Gebel Chontos, who started 20th place. He's up into 13th here, of course, went for that different strategy. And so far, he's making it work.
He certainly is indeed. Of course, he's still got quite a few laps left in the medium tyres. How well are they going to last on? He's done 5 laps on them already. Most of the other drivers did between 7 to 12. Also, we have that slight exception for Luca Rapassa that went long on the medium tyres, as did Barry Burman that we see up in P4 at the moment. So it's been a true game of strategy, but also how well can you manage your tyres. And a few drivers have really benefited from them as well, but also a few drivers have really suffered the consequences of trying to play games. One that's done well though, Barry Burman, as we alluded to earlier, 2/10 off the back of Bench, looking for a podium position at the moment and could well make this in the next couple of corners. I reckon he'll make it into turn 1, as we saw a couple of laps ago. It's a favourite overtaking spot of his, and we have seen him pull it off masterfully time and time again. Into turn 27 though, he's not wasting any time as he sends it to the inside, committed once again, and Burman, at the first time of asking, dispatches of the Alpine rather cleanly.
I mean, Shabakod, you knew that was coming, didn't he? You could see he moved over, he didn't bother. As Liam Stevens is out, he went into the pits, and unfortunately he picked up a 10-second penalty in the process. I'm not sure there what happened for Liam Stevens, unless it was just a choice to retire from the race. So, yeah, that's an odd one. It'd be great to hear back what happened there for Stevens in that one, because I'm not sure he would have really opted to pit for a new tyre. 3 laps to go to the end, unless he had a puncture. I'm not entirely sure, but we continue on nevertheless. And 3 laps to go, and we can see Longay's just checked out of this race, hasn't he? Really never fell under pressure at all from Halliday. And Burman now, of course, is in a podium spot, but of course wants to go 1 or 2 steps further here and look for a race win here around Jeddah. Has only got through 10th gap to Jan Halliday and should bring that gap down quite nicely here, because pace-wise, he's just been nowhere near Nicholas Longay, has he, on that same tyre for the same amount of laps.
Certainly does. We saw a 10-second penalty go to Joris Krozen for ignoring yellow flags. Not quite sure what happened there. I'm going to assume it was something to do with when Liam Stevens headed in to the pit lane to retire. Gabor Constas got past Leo Lund up for P11, of course, as we head through the second sector into the third. The Red Bull that started on the harder tyres now starting to make waves, as he's on a set of the medium tyres, has been for the last 6 laps. We'll continue to try and push through. It's Van Pookie on the back of Bentz as well, looking to do something similar to what Barry Burman did a few laps ago, try and get past and maybe challenge for the podium places as well. The Mercedes to the inside line with the DRS assistance, making it look easy, and he passes past the Alpine. Oh, thought he was going to go for a move from Barry Burman there, maybe just getting in the mirrors of the Scuderia Ferrari, just maybe trying to intimidate them as he works his way through. Leo Lund's crashed down the first corner. What have we seen here? That's a massive pile-up. Oh no, that's
no. It's in the. I was going to say as well. I thought it was at turn 1, but no, it was in the pit lane. Unfortunately, there for Leo Lund, that's his race over, and that gifts Pierre Schneider a top 10 for definite here in this race. As we did see as well earlier on, Cameron Dowds make that move ahead of Shanika Clay up into P7 for the kick Sabre. Rapassa as well on the back of his teammate Bench Shabakonyi, and well, Barry Burman went for the send. Bench didn't defend it. The fact that Luke is also on some very good pace, I'm sure he might think about doing the same into that final corner, because either way, Luke will be looking to go for a send and make a couple of moves here. Cameron Dowds as well could be looking to go for similar here, as we have 2 laps to go, lap 23 and 25, and of course Jan has just, maybe it's tactical here from Jan, maybe he's purposely not right on the back of Nicholas Longay just because he doesn't want to have that full effect of that slipstream and that dirty air.
I think that could be the case. Thankfully, we haven't had a pile-up at turn 1. It did look like it, according to the track map, and that's obviously where we try and get a massive source of information from. The battle right up the front is starting to try and get close. The 2 Alpines battling it out. Luca Rapassa gets the better of Bent into turn 27, which seems to be the favoured overtaking spot here at the moment. Jan Halliday now starting to close in on Nicholas Longay. Barry Burman on the back as well. We are going to see those 3 start to close it up as we have the next 2 laps of racing here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Jeddah Corniche circuit tends itself to fantastic racing, and we've got just under 2 laps to go.
We certainly have, and of course Burman, Rapassa, Dowser on the charge on the newer tyres of those on the hards. And then, of course, Nicholas Longe is looking to just try and hold on to a lead he's had all race long. And you can see now, Jan started to bring that gap a little bit further down now than Nicholas Longe. He started to think more about that move to go for the lead rather than just sticking in P2 and just comfortably going along at his own pace. As Pressionator there gets a penalty, that confirms Gabor Chantos with the top 10 as it stands. Of course, last time out in Austria, Gabor was on for a top 10 place, but a car that had a puncture ahead of him spun him around and stopped him from getting points. Tonight is going to be looking for points in that Red Bull. P9 on the cards here for Chantos. And, oh no, I was going to say Wojtek Seg as well, but he's a little bit too further back there in terms of gap to those in P9 and 10. So he'll still be struggling here if he wants to look for a top 10 place. But of course, the top three is all down to Longe, Halliday and Burmond. I don't think Luca's going to do much about it here. He's already half a second back from Pookie. Heading on to that final lap, Dowds is on the back of Ben Shabakanya here. He's looking to make a move to possibly jump up into the top 6.
That he is. We head on to that final lap, lap 25 of 25 here in PC Tier 1 for World Online Racing Season 21. And it's going to be interesting to see which of our drivers is able to try and hash it out the best. We got Nicholas Longe and Jan Halliday, both on 16-lap-old hard tyres. It's going to be Barry Burmond with an advantage of 4 laps who sits in third. It's Van Pookie has only got 15 to his hard tyres as well. And then the rest of the train further back, a whole mix of tyre ages as we make our way all the way down to P16 as we've got that many drivers remaining in this Grand Prix. But the question, which way is this race going to go? Can Longe hold on for the next 2 sectors? Will Halliday be able to send a move? Can Burmond pull off something that could be described as a miracle? Let us know in the live chat who you're rooting for, who you think is going to take the win here this afternoon. We'll hand it over to Nathan.
Well, battery-wise, for our two leaders, they're very similar, both at around that 70% mark. And Burmond has just over 80 moments to go, so he's looking to push late in this one, burning the batteries, Burmond. So has Halliday and Longe just burning a little bit there and preparing themselves for that final run down towards 27. But a mistake there from Halliday as that cost him a chance of looking to go for victory here as we head down to the final quarter for the final time in this race. Longe has led from lap 1 until lap 25. Is he going to be losing it though to Halliday? Through the final corner they go. Longe went defensive. Halliday's looking to put the burners on quickly, but I think it might be over here. I think it might be a win. It will be for Nicholas Longe. He won in round 1. He wins in round 2. It's back-to-back for Nicholas Longe, who finishes half a tenth ahead of Jan Halliday, and that one mistake has probably cost that victory for him. And Barry Burmond tried something different, stayed out longer, and he's still going to be rewarded with a podium for his efforts. And then Pookie and Rapasa round out that top 5. What a race we had there. And I've got to say, TK, for a game which doesn't promote racing, we had quite a lot of it around Jeddah.
We certainly did indeed. Fantastic battles saw up and down the grid, all the way down pretty much to P19 and P20 throughout the course of that race, and we had all 20 drivers racing, of course. But what a race from Nicholas Longe. Went slightly earlier on a set of the medium tyres, 8 laps, and then 17 on the hards. The undercut proving powerful again here this afternoon. He managed to make it work, gone back to back, and that's absolutely incredible. But we've got to talk about Halliday. I think he had a chance there, maybe just one too many mistakes.
Yep, definitely a mistake there into turn 22, costing probably a tenth, maybe a tenth and a half there, or unfortunately, that was race over for him. But the results of this race, what a race we had this evening here in WORT1. It was Longe who takes his second win in the season ahead of Halliday and Burmond in the top 3. Then we had Pookie, Rapasa, Dowd, Sabakonyi, Clay, Chantos and Hoffland, our top 10, all taking points home in this one. And then we had the rest of the grid being Philip Preshneda, Steg, Gal, Olnart, Crows and Hardy, Leo Lund, Liam Stevens, Ishmael Fassi, Anika Bainer, the full 20 on the grid. Of course, we did lose Stevens, Fassi, and Bainer earlier on, but there we are, 17 classified drivers. And let's hope we can try and get a couple of them in for a quick chat in the interview room. I'll put a quick message in now, and hopefully we can have a word from our race winner at Definite, because Nicholas Longe, yet again, up on top.
I mean, that'll be the hope and the dream, and we have got him sat in the interview waiting room here, Nathan. I'm sure he's eager to talk about his quarrels and his race win that we saw so pleasantly, and it is back-to-back in what could be described as the perfect start for the Aston Martin representative.
Indeed, we'll drug him in now. Nico, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yes, hello guys.
Perfect. So, great race. I mean, back-to-back here in WOR Tier 1, of course, a win last time out in Austria. another win here at Jeddah, and that race just looks controlled from start to end. Of course, a brilliant lap in qualifying to put yourself on pole. Then all the way to the end, it was just controlled ahead of Halliday the whole way. Did you ever have, well, apart from that last lap, did you ever worry about Jan Halliday looking for a move?
Honestly, I was just more focused on Barry the whole time. Not gonna lie. Obviously, I used my clean air to do a good pace for the train, and Jan was, I think, just sitting behind, saving his engine, his tires, and hoping for a chance at the end of the race, which I expected. And honestly, it just benefited me and him by Jan saving his tires and staying behind like that, because Barry would just have such a hard time getting past at the end. So I think he played it as he should have. And myself, I'm very happy with the race. It was, everything went to plan.
Certainly, and I think, of course, at the moment you're without a seat in the world of F1 sim racing, as we all know. So I suppose having these results here and there, and of course in other leagues, really puts you in a good step of teams looking at offering you for the new season. Of course, at the moment you're in the Aston Martin car, and we know a lot of time drivers say there's always a little bit of difference here and there. Of course, you've had a lot of experience in the Ferrari. Is there actually much of a difference that you feel when you step into the Aston Martin rather than that Ferrari car?
Honestly, I cannot tell. And if we pro drivers having a hard time to tell the difference, even if there's a tiny one, that means most people will never tell a difference. I mean, if there is, it's very, very slight. It could be the difference in esports between P1 and P10, of course, but at the moment I haven't tested thoroughly enough to give a good opinion.
Definitely. Thank you for that one. Anything from you, TK?
No, just want to say fantastic race from yourself. What kind of prompted for that undercut? So you went in slightly earlier than some of the drivers around you. We saw Burman go considerably longer on his set of tyres. Was that the plan to begin with, or did we see that as a Constantina effect of maybe Crozen going in that much earlier?
No, it was definitely a reaction to the people behind, because the undercut is massive here. And I expected Barry to go long in the first place, because once the people around you pit, there's kind of is no reason for you to pit the lap after, because one lap advantage is just not enough to get past someone in front of you. So I knew he would go, it would extend 4 or 5 maybe laps, which he did. And he did get through, which he drove very well, but he just couldn't get quite the last 2 positions, that is why I went for the undercut. The track position is king, and just decided to manage my race from the front rather than having to overtake.
Indeed. Well, Nicholas, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you in the commentary box as usual, and hopefully we'll see you in here next week as well. So have a good evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys. Ciao.
Bye. And next we have Jan Halliday. Jan, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yep, all good. Can you hear me?
Perfect. I mean, Tier 1 podium. I didn't expect to see that for a long time. Welcome in. Great to have you in here with us.
You underestimated me, man. My engineer told me. You said my results were bad at the start of the game. So
I even messaged Liam and I said I made a mistake with that. I was going to say that there's a few drivers that didn't have the pace. Realised there was only one of them. So then I just brought your name up. Technically, the commentator's curse has worked because it gave you a podium in the end. Qualifying, though. Great lap. Did you expect to be that far up the grid?
Well, I had no pressure. Like, I had 20 minutes of practice before this because I just came home from work. And yeah, like, if there is no pressure, I just drive well, it seems like. I had some practice because I did PSG LF2 like a month ago, so it's not like I had no practice, but yeah, happy with the lap. Like, I messed up sector 1, maybe there was a chance for pole as well, but that would be too much, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, and of course she was, did a really good job all the way through that race, and then the final lap, he was looking to make the move on Nico, or at least close up into him into turn 22, and then you made a little bit of a mistake. Do you think that cost that chance of a win?
Honestly, I didn't have a great pace because I couldn't really save the tires behind Nico. Like, he was too fast for me to keep up, so I tried my best to save the tires till the end, but still finished in the puncture territory in the end. But yeah, I was focused on Barry a lot, as Nico said, like on the fresh tires. But when it was like 2 laps to go and I held him up for like 2-3 laps, I was like, maybe I can fight for the win if I get a good run or something. Almost it happened, but yeah, like I said, Nico was just a bit too fast, so GG's to them for the win.
Indeed. Well, that's all from me. Congratulations on the P2. Anything from you, TK, quickly?
No, nothing from me, Jan. Just fantastic race from yourself, and unfortunate just to miss out on the win there.
All right, thank you, guys. See ya.
Bye-bye. And then finally, we have our final podium sitter. I can't remember the last time we had all 3 in the commentary box. But Barry, welcome in. Great to have you in here with us for our final interview of the evening. P3, so close to the win at the end. Of course, you took that bit of a risk with the strategy, but either way, still a podium.
Yeah, hello to you guys, and also GG's to Nico and Jan. Yeah, I mean, going to this race, we wanted to try something different, and I don't know, we kind of knew it. It's gonna be not a really great strategy, but it's also we wanted to test some few stuff and wanted to try it. I mean, at the end, I think I did one of the best races I've ever done just to finish on podium. Not gonna lie. I think the third tier, the engine temp, is just quite strict in this game, and then it's just so tough to overtake. And but yeah, I mean, GG's to Jan and Nico as well.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we saw that like the normal strategy of, going in a little bit early worked, and also your strategy going a bit later worked. If you was to go back into that race now, would you have opted to probably stay with the rest of the train and pit early, or would you have still gone for that later stop and just looking to push forward at the end?
Never gonna do that long again. I can tell you that. As I said before going to the race, we knew it's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
And but yeah, man, I just sometimes you just have to try it. It's a good experience, good learning. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I just tried it, and it didn't pay off. But I can tell you, I absolutely nailed every move, I think. But yeah, I mean, Jan played it quite smart. I think if I would get to P2. I think I could challenge Nico probably, because obviously when you're in P1, P2 position, the problem is basically solved. You just have better tire, you can attack, and still will be tough because I absolutely destroyed my tires. But I mean, at the end of the day, good learning, and yeah, we will see for the next weeks. And hopefully I'm not going to choose any toast strategy like this.
Certainly. Next week, we're off to Australia. I mean, is that track normally one that people go long on, or is it normally everybody pits on the same lap?
To be honest, I have no idea, but I don't think... I think you're barely going to find any track in this game that going longer is better. Yeah. Because of their tier and engine temp and everything. But I mean, we will see. Maybe we try it again. Maybe we keep trying it till we get the win.
Yeah, keep trying every week, and then eventually we'll get the win. Maybe it'll be round 3. Maybe it'll be the last race. You never know.
Maybe safety car. I don't know if we have it on here.
I think we do, but we haven't had any yet, so you can't experience that. But anyway, Barry, thanks for joining us. Pleasure to have you here in the commentary box, and hopefully we'll see you this time next week in Australia with a win.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Nathan. Have a good one, guys.
There we go. What a race we had there, TK. One of the best we've had in Tier 1 for a while. I mean, I'll say that as if we haven't been here for second time in like a year. But really good way to end off the evening. And it proves that even though the game on a whole, difficult to overtake, we still had some great overtaking either way, and still a fight for the win till the end.
Oh, for sure. And Jeddah's one of those circuits that can really tend itself to races like we saw here this afternoon. It can either be one of those that ends up in a train, or we see those drivers going for the little bit of cheeky moves to the inside, sticking a nose, sticking a wheel in, and sometimes it pays off. Sometimes we see moves that we saw with Ismail Fassi, and obviously in the wall with a little bit of wing damage. But I think what really shook the grid up was those Tier 2 and the reservists coming in, 14 of them in total in the end. And I think it was a lot of unexpected from those drivers, and they proved that they did really well.
Certainly, and I think it shows that sometimes, even though they're Tier 2 and, they're many of them the stars of tomorrow, they've still got pace to stick with the top guys. And even if you had a grid with maybe a few more of the Tier 1 level drivers, I think, the likes of Leo Lund, Luca Rapassa, Cameron Dave, Jan Halliday, they all still be able to stick with that grid and probably fit in quite well. So, that also, I suppose, helps Luke out a bit now, because he's got more drivers that can actually fit the pace of Tier 1 for when the full times don't turn up.
I think it's a blessing in disguise potentially for him. He knows he's got a lot of drivers, but also the Tier 1 drivers now know that they've got a considerable amount of competition.
Certainly, and I think that bodes well going into whenever the new season of F1 sim racing is, because there's so many drivers now that will be saying, right, actually, well, I finished P3 or whatever in WOR Tier 1. I've proved that I'm quick enough. That's what these drivers will be saying now to teams, being like, well, I want that opportunity, I deserve it. And that's when decisions become difficult, because teams have got to think, well, do we go for some new fresh blood, some of our younger drivers, or do we stick with the experience that many of them have already got? So this really does give some of the teams a bit of a headache heading into this new season.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't want to be a team manager, especially for that top level of esports that has to make the call of which drivers do we take to that LAN event that we know is such an intense competition. And I mean, we've seen it in seasons gone by where drivers are kind of inducted slowly. They've done 1 or 2 races every event at each time just to get used to it, because it's not about the racing necessarily, it's about being in that competitive environment, about being with all your 20 drivers in that environment when you can speak to the guy who crashed you out. And it's a mental blockade that you've really got to get over, that it's just that step up from everything else.
Certainly, and I think it just, you know, when you see drivers here racing Tier 1, they just increase that level of maturity because they've got to, you know, they're gonna, a lot of them, you know, some of them don't like to say, but they end up becoming public figures, so they've got to, you know, be a little bit more mature, especially when they're on track. You know, they need to give themselves a decent name. You know, many drivers who get bad names, I don't think any of it's deserved, but,
No.
you know, your actions, you know, sometimes, you know, will give that a higher chance. So, you know, lots of different things go into, you know, being at that top level, and some of these drivers like Cameron, Leo, Luca, Jan, they're all learning a lot of that when they race here in Tier 1, and I presume the same will happen if they ever do that the same over in PSGL. But, of course, tonight is the... No, not tonight is the night. Now is the time of the night where we end the stream. We're done with the racing. We have another week until we come back here for Tier 1. Of course, Dan should be back from holiday. If not, TK, I'm sure you'll be welcome back in if you would like to join us. It's been a pleasure to have you alongside myself in the commentary box. And, well, until next week, guys, for Australia, round 3 of the championship, that's all from me and TK. Good night.